shit. And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Tuesday, January 10th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Adam Scherer. We are brought to you by BetMGM, and everything has changed since this morning. We have all of the value in the world. It's going to feel, well, pretty similar on a couple of these teams where guys are just going to not look all that interesting. They're now going to be GPP pivots. There are a couple teams now that are absolutely ridiculous for today's slate. I'm excited to break that down. I hope you guys are as well. Hit that like button if you haven't already. That's how you should be starting this one off right away. Go straight to the thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Adam, what in the world do we have on our hands today?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of hate slates like this where it's just like there's a lot of really good, really obvious plays because there's not a lot. There's not a lot you can do to differentiate your lineups and make them look different than everybody else's without just basically saying like, oh, well, if two arenas catch on fire, I'll win money. Like, it's just really, really difficult on slates like this. But, it's what it is. Obviously, there will be some spots where you can look to get away from ownership. But, I expect a high-scoring slate and a lot of overlap.
You and me both. I'm going to export this crunch that I just put in. That way I could at least talk about what I would be doing if lock were right now. That is perfect timing. We got an ownership update a couple minutes ago, so that is ready to go for us. I think it's going to take us the full hour, so I am ready to get started if you are ready to get started.
Yeah, let's go.
First game up. This one's pretty easy to break down. We've got the Detroit Pistons, 13.5-point underdogs in Philly, 225 total. We're starting it off with obviously no Bojan Bogdanovic, which we knew since earlier today. No real news coming in from the Pistons. No Bojan, no Duren, no Bagley. Technically, Rodney Magruder is off the injury report. We still don't have a status on Isaiah Livers. And whatever a Jared Rhoden is available for today. Shoulder shrug on that one. Isaiah Stewart is the key piece of this Pistons team, or at least for right now, he is. 5,600 on FanDuel power forward center, 5,100 on DraftKings power forward center. He was significantly more owned earlier today because there wasn't crazy value everywhere. His ownership has now come down. He's very interesting to me. How do you want to handle Isaiah Stewart here today?
Yeah, I mean, he still looks good. Like, this is just an example of someone whose ownership is dropped because of other things opening up on the slate, but he's still a really good play. Like, nothing changed for him. He is likely to play north of 30 minutes as long as he can avoid foul trouble here against Joel Embiid. He's, over a fantasy point per minute guy without Bojan Bogdanovic or Cade Cunningham on the floor. He has power forward eligibility, which is really nice. And it's the reason he is still pulling ownership, because at this point you have very, very cheap centers that look very good, in addition to being able to pay up for somebody like Embiid on the other side of this game. But being able to get to Stewart at power forward is still useful. Still has a 15% chance of being in the optimal lineup, 21% projected ownership. I still like Isaiah Stewart.
You and me both. How do you want to handle everything else for the Pistons? Killian Hayes and Hamidou Diallo, the only other two guys on the Pistons that are pulling double-digit ownership. It's obviously a difficult spot. Hard to get really excited about a team that's a 13.5-point dog. But do you see yourself getting to the Pistons maybe a little bit more so than the public?
Yeah, so I mean, with Diallo, we still need the starting lineup. I'm assuming he starts for now, in which case he is going to look pretty good at 3,500, shooting guard, small forward eligible. He's not a bad point per minute guy, and if he starts, I expect him to play around 26 minutes, give or take. Hasn't started any games this year, but last year averaged around 27.5 minutes per game when he started. I think expecting, that 26 to 28 range makes sense if he's in the starting lineup. If they go to like Rodney Magruder or Isaiah Livers or something like that, then you get into the situation with Diallo where, could he play 24, 26 minutes off the bench? Sure, but it's a lot riskier. The ownership would come down too, but if he's starting, I'd perfectly fine getting there at 3,500. The Killian Hayes ownership makes sense to me. He's 5,700. He's also been playing huge minutes recently. We've seen in general Detroit run pretty flat rotations and you not get a ton of playing time for guys. But over his last 5 games, with the exception of one game where he played 16 minutes, which I believe was foul trouble, if I remember right. No, I don't know what it was. But
is that the ejection
against Orlando on the 28th?
It's the ejection game.
What'd you say?
The ejection game.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, so that's what that was. Other than that, 34, 36, 35, 39 minutes, 31, 34. Like he's been playing a ton. So I think expecting him to play, low to mid 30s again makes sense here. He sees a little bit of a bump in production without Cunningham or Bogdanovich on the floor. So I get the ownership there. Though one spot that does stand out to me, though, that I think is going a little bit overlooked is Jaden Ivey at 5,200. Even if you just give him 28 minutes, which is what, basically he's been averaging, he's at 28 and a half over his last 10 games. Certainly he could play more without Bogdanovich here. But, even at 28 minutes, I think he looks pretty good. He's seen a sizable bump in production without Bogdanovich or Cunningham on the floor. Usage rate in 162 minutes without them is 33%. 1.22 DraftKings points per minute. Not saying that I expect, 1.2 fantasy points per minute here, but I think he's a little bit underpriced and underowned for Bogdanovich to be out. So for me, I agree with the field on Stewart, Diallo, Hayes, but I would throw Ivy into that mix as well. Then you get to the Alec Burks, Sadiq Bey type pieces where they're not getting much ownership. I don't think they project as well as those other four. Could they still get there? Sure. Could this be a game where Burks goes out there and plays 30 minutes? There's no reason it can't. Bey could. I have Bey projected for 30. If he played 34 or 36, it wouldn't shock anybody. But I think they both should be getting the least ownership on the team. So mostly just see it the same way the field does, with the exception of I am just higher on Jaden Ivey.
I'm a little bit higher on Ivy. I'm a little bit higher on Bey too, at least in comparison to that ownership. 3.5 just feels kind of weird for somebody that's going to be starting here. And it just kind of feels like he's going to play 28 minutes today, no matter what, given how many guys are out. And would not be surprised at all to see that number get to like 33 or 34 if this one isn't actually competitive. Price just feels a little too low for that ownership. But again, we're talking about tournament flyers here, not guys that you should just be like lock buttoning your lineup. I don't have anything else for Detroit.
Yeah, me neither.
Okay. Then we go to Philly, and we do have good signs, at least, that Joel Embiid is in here. He did go through shoot around. I'm treating it like he's in. 13.5 point line certainly helps. He's 17% owned on DraftKings. He's 10% owned on FanDuel. To me, he's basically the only guy that I have any real interest in. Harden a little bit less so, Maxey a little bit less so. My expectation is that I probably only have a little bit of Embiid if I have anybody. Are you willing to go to Embiid tonight?
Yeah, I think Embiid and Harden both look good here. Embiid pulling 18% ownership on DraftKings still has a 20% chance of being optimal, which is kind of surprising to me given the quality center value on the slate. But he does project really well. I'm not expecting him to be limited. I went to 35 minutes on him. We know that, typically he's playing in that range. And it's certainly a good matchup here against Detroit. So he looks really good. And then I'm still fine getting to Harden. I expect 37, 38 minutes from him, assuming the game's relatively competitive. And it's not like he's been a bad point per minute guy with Embiid out there this year. I think he's actually a little bit easier to get to as well. Like relative to salary, I think Embiid looks a bit better than Harden. Yeah. But when you factor in that, Harden's a point guard, whereas Embiid's a center, and now you have Orlando Robinson at center, you have the Phoenix guys at center, you have, all the other normal centers. I think it might actually end up being a little bit easier to get to Harden, and he's getting a little bit less ownership as well.
Yeah, I think he's basically properly owned at that 9% mark. I didn't mean to dismiss him as much as I did. He does show up pretty clearly as my second best option. I wish that I had more that I wanted to say for Philly. Like, I think DeAnthony Melton's getting underrepresented in the industry. He's just so irrelevant today that I don't think that it matters. But he played minimal minutes over the past 2 games. There's very clear reasons for that. And I don't think that he's being projected correctly. I also don't think it matters if you get 29 or 30 minutes of DeAnthony Melton on today's slate.
Wait, how many minutes do you think he's playing? Because I didn't come anywhere close to that.
I gave him 29.
Yeah, I gave him 22.
Okay, why?
Because I think he plays 22.
Thanks for that. We're to really dig in.
I mean, last game Embiid didn't play, so he started. Like, he's not starting today.
That's a great point that I forgot about PJ Tucker. So I'm wrong.
I mean, nothing wrong with forgetting about PJ Tucker, but yeah.
Yeah. I scrolled down and I was like, what are you talking? Like, I'm looking at it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, it's very clear that he is. I forgot about PJ Tucker. So yeah, you're good. All good. Hey, I don't like DeAnthony Melton all that much today. I think the industry is all over that projection. And I think it's very apparent that he should not be projected all that
for
well.
28 minutes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah, I was gonna say I gave him 22, and I wasn't even really confident in that, so I was a little confused by 30.
Yeah, I was just looking at it like, oh, it's they're going to go Maxey, Melton, Harden, Harris, Embiid. Great starting five. We're going to be good to go. Like, I don't know why he's not getting looked at a little bit better. He's fine. Fits this. No, I'm stupid. I'm willing to admit it, mostly because I'm forced to, but I'm willing to admit it nonetheless. Anything else for Philadelphia?
The third piece for me, if you for some reason wanted one, would be
Please say Melton.
70. What?
I thought you were going to say Melton.
Would be Melton. I think he's going to steal. He's going to get 8 steals in 22 minutes. No, but Tyrese Maxey, like, we haven't seen the huge minute game from him yet, but I think it's coming sooner than later. Last game was a blowout. He played like 33 minutes. Wouldn't like I gave him 36 today. Wouldn't be surprising at all if you just got 38, 39 minutes from him if this game were competitive. Clearly not projecting that, but like the path to it is there. At 7,200, I don't think he's any sort of a priority or anything. He's only pulling 5% ownership on DraftKings, but he would be the third guy for me if you did need something beyond Embiid and Harden.
What did you think? This is totally irrelevant, but there was a lot of chatter when Maxey was first coming back that they should continue to start Melton and bring Maxey off the bench. It's a shame that they can't do that, like just from ego perspective and like, the way that teams work. Because I think that would fit this team better.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Maxey was really good before the injury.
Yeah, but I'm not saying that like Tyrese Maxey should now play 24 minutes as a backup. Like, you're still playing him the 30, like the full run Jordan Clarkson type guy coming off the bench.
Yeah, you're just getting another defender out there with Harden and with Harden, and then
it just makes the pieces in total fit to get like a more synergy for the team. You're not really changing anything, and like very still could like clearly close and stuff, but you're never doing that. So it kind of sucks. All right, schedule for the rest of the day. Simple. Eric, Greg, live before lock coming up next, 6 p.m. all the way up until 7:30. We have 1,500 people in here, 172 likes. Pretty good for this Tuesday slate. Don't be afraid to keep hitting that like button. No reason that we can't run this number all the way up to 500 by the time we get to 6 o'clock. But to do that, we're going to have to get to 250 right about now. Well, this one's going to get fun. Well, the second half of it will.
Somebody's complaining that we didn't talk about FanDuel. Like, you didn't just talk about FanDuel the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, I talk about FanDuel for every single team.
Right.
Well, I don't know what I was supposed to say. I don't like Philly all that much, and I'm not playing anybody other than Embiid. Whether I'm talking about FanDuel or DraftKings, those are all the same things. It's a lot harder to talk about FanDuel because most guys just don't look like good plays. The pricing on FanDuel has become, I don't know, like, I think they've both gone the opposite directions. I think DraftKings has gotten a little bit softer, and I think FanDuel has gotten a little bit more difficult, and it feels like there's just a chasm between them.
Yeah. I mean, I hardly play FanDuel, so I don't know, but
sure,
that is how it seemed earlier in the year.
The Oklahoma City Thunder are 2-point dogs in Miami, 222 total. I guess I don't know if that line has moved at all. Yep, still 2-point dogs. For OKC, we kind of just got everybody that's in. No Jeremiah Robinson Earl, no Poku, no Usman Jang, but it's the same sort of rotation we've been seeing, at which point no one's really pulling any ownership. 10% for Shea is the max on DraftKings. 15 is the max for Shea on FanDuel, for those that would care. I find Oklahoma City to be wildly unappealing, although they are, like, in theory, a little bit of interesting just because of what they're going against for Miami. And that makes me like Shea a little bit more, but I just don't know how you go any further down than like their fifth best guy. Like, I don't know how you go to anyone other than Shea, Giddey, Williams, or Dort.
Yeah, and I mean, realistically, I'm going to have trouble getting to the final two there as well. Gilgeous-Alexander, 10-3. Sure, like, there's plenty of value for it. He is point guard only on DraftKings, so that does make it, a little bit tougher. He's competing with James Harden, who I like more. He's competing, like, you're giving a roster spot basically to Dwayne Washington at point guard. You have plenty of other guards, but also not getting much ownership here. So, like, right now, I would be getting to Harden before I get to Gilgeous-Alexander. They're projected for similar ownership on DraftKings. They are similarly priced, and I just have one projected higher, and that's Harden. But so they're similar plays to me. They're not like huge priorities, and they certainly have very high ceilings. Giddey, you can expect to play 31, 32 minutes. He looks fine. Beyond that, I really just don't want anything from this team. Like you just get to guys where they're not going to be the highest scorers on the slate. They're very unlikely to be the best point per dollar values because of Miami and Phoenix. So it's just kind of like, all right, what role is this person serving in your lineup?
Yeah, I've got about 15% of Shea right now. There's just so much free salary to go around that I'm just finding myself getting to a little bit of everybody. That's exactly what he's owned. That's basically what he came out of my sim at. So I don't have much problem. And given the amount of Miami Heat that I'm going to have, I really don't mind getting to more Shea. Like if I'm going to have a piece coming back on the opposite side, that sort of works for me. Do you want to just get into it now? Because I don't have anything else to add for Oklahoma City.
So actually, I kind of wanted to double back for a second. Do you have SGA or Harden projected higher?
I have Harden by 0.8.
Okay, because I have Harden by like 4.
Okay.
And
that seems a lot.
Like I might just need to walk it back somewhere, but I can't really figure out where. So I was just curious.
Yeah. I've Harden by 0.8, 47.9 to 47.1.
Okay. And we have SGA, so I kind of figured I was off on my own there.
Yeah, probably a tad high. Nothing too crazy. Maybe you should give one of his minutes to DeAnthony Melton. That's where we could find that extra playing time. All right, let's get into it.
I can't figure out where I'm wrong, though, is the issue.
That's a big... I could probably find 100 places for you. So the Miami Heat blew everything up. No Kyle Lowry, no Tyler Hero, no Caleb Martin, no Bam Adebayo, no Duncan Robinson, no Nikola Jovic, and no Omer Yurtseven. So we get Butler in, Oladipo in, Strus in, Vincent in, Highsmith, Orlando Robinson, Dwayne Dedmon, Jamal Cain, and then Q tag on Udonis Haslem if you really want to make things slightly more complicated. I hope that he doesn't matter. Not from like a DFS perspective. I just don't want to find out that he played. I think that the starting lineup is pretty easy to lay out. There are obviously 2 pivot points for it, but I think that I feel pretty good about the starting lineup. What is your expectation for starters for Miami?
Vincent, Strus, Butler, Highsmith, and Orlando Robinson.
So I think the 2 things that you and I would be on the same page for would be, it wouldn't surprise me all if Victor Oladipo started. I would assume in the Gabe Vincent spot. And then if they wanted to start Dwayne Dedmon over Orlando Robinson, that also wouldn't shock me either. I expect to get 48 minutes out of the 2 of those guys sort of by default today. Although if you're ever going to go to a slightly smaller lineup, OKC is probably that team.
Yeah, I just don't.
I gave them all 48 minutes.
Yeah. I mean, I went 30 to Robinson, 18 to Dedmon.
I went 20-20. That's allowing me to get to at least a small amount of Dedmon just in case. Orlando Robinson's 5,700 on FanDuel, which is incredible. Dedmon's 3,900. So I do want to take that shot given that salary. It wouldn't take much. I don't know how much Dedmon can actually be out there. But let's just start with, is there anybody that you don't expect to get to from Miami? Like, do you see yourself even getting to Jamal Cain?
I don't think I'll get to Cain. Like, I have him projected high enough that he's not going to be below my threshold in Fantasy Cruncher, but I doubt that I get to him on this slate.
Okay. Who do you expect to be getting to the most? We've got Jimmy Butler projected for 50% ownership on DraftKings, 60% on FanDuel. Seems to me he's the easiest guy to get to, although he makes me nervous just because I don't want to say that he's priced appropriately, but like he shouldn't be like, you would expect Jimmy Butler to have this giant usage rate bump when all of the team leaves, and he just doesn't. He somehow gets more assists and more rebounds.
Yeah, the ownership on him is a little bit higher than I think it should be as well. Like, he looks good. I do have him projected a little bit lower than I think pretty much everybody. I have him at like 48 DraftKings points, but like you said, the usage rate doesn't really change. It's just that he rebounds more, he gets more assists. I gave him a couple more minutes than I would have if those guys were in. He looks really good. It's just that with all the value on this slate, there's going to be more. I'm trying to figure out like how to word this. There's going to be more spots where you can pivot off of Jimmy Butler to similar looking guys than else, like other popular plays. because of the value, it's not like you just have to talk about guys that are priced right around 9K.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to, you're just going to have extra salary and be able to pretty easily get from Jimmy Butler to guys that are, closer to 10K. So, your Donovan Mitchell, Damian Lillard, even, in some instances, Harden or Gilgeous-Alexander, guys like that. Like Jimmy Butler probably needs to be one of the highest scorers on the slate for you to be happy that you rostered him. And there are enough high-end options that can beat him. That's a spot that if he's going to pull 50% ownership, I expect to kind of just be getting away from some of that. Obviously, still playing some Jimmy Butler, but getting away from some of that, moving it to some other pieces. Just because when you look at like Orlando Robinson pulling 50% ownership, there's not another center that I have projected, or another player that I have projected for 10 times his salary, and so there's no real, outside of saying like maybe he gets hurt, maybe he gets in foul trouble, there's no real reason for me to get away from Orlando Robinson because I don't see anything that's really similar. And that's going to be the same for guys like, Gabe Vincent, some of these other cheap players, Dwayne Washington. Whereas with Butler, I can just say, okay, there's a lot of really good players that can outscore him.
Do you see anybody's ownership that you don't really like? Like, I think Robinson's makes sense. Obviously, I think Jimmy Butler's makes sense. We're getting Gabe Vincent in the high 30s, Strus and Oladipo in the mid 20s. Highsmith at 12 is really interesting to me. He is not a good per minute guy, but sort of fits positionally pretty well for what they have to do today. 12% ownership feels like he's the most underrepresented Heat.
Yeah, I agree. And I really hope that comes up between now and lot because I don't want my night to revolve around Hayward Highsmith. But he's only 3,100. And to the point you said, like, I think he's going to play a lot of minutes here because they're actually not that limited in the backcourt. You still have Gabe Vincent, you still have Victor Oladipo, but it's the front court where you're really thin. And so I think that you're going to see, a lot of minutes for Highsmith, a lot of minutes for Strus, these guys that can play multiple positions. And at 3,100, he's not a good point per minute guy. I only have him projected for 2/3 of a fantasy point per minute. But if he goes out there and plays 35, 36 minutes, you're still talking about a mid-20s, low to mid-20s projection.
Yeah. And it doesn't take much to fall into a little bit more here and be an exceptional value given the MPE, given the $100 above the minimum price tag. How are you managing the Vincent Oladipo relationship, or do you not really care? Vincent 3,300, very easy to get to. Oladipo basically appropriately priced at 5,300.
I don't think he's appropriately priced.
Oh, talk to me.
I mean, I think Oladipo's underpriced. I think he sees a very nice bump in usage here. I expect that he will play whatever minutes Jimmy Butler is not on the floor. So in those minutes, you're going to get a massive usage rate for Victor Oladipo. In the minutes he's alongside Butler, you're probably looking at around 20%. But, I expect him to play 12 minutes or so without Butler. So I think Oladipo's underpriced here. I have him at like 34 DraftKings points at 5,300. So I think he looks really good. He's pulling 25% ownership. I think Vincent's clearly underpriced. We have him projected for about 26 DraftKings points, as do I. I have them both in for 32 minutes. If it ends up being like, 30 for Vincent, 34 for Oladipo, or vice versa, that wouldn't be too surprising, but they both really stand out to me.
Okay. Do you expect to get to Dedmon?
Probably not. The reason would be that I am planning on setting a max one of Orlando Robinson or Dwayne Dedmon rule. And I just assume Robinson's going to end up in like every lineup. So like the idea would be, Robinson gets in foul trouble or rolls an ankle or something and Dedmon has to play more. Dedmon's a good point per minute guy. So if he goes out there and for any reason plays 24, 26 minutes, he's going to be really good. But I just don't, assuming he's coming off the bench, I don't think those minutes are there unless something happens to Robinson. If Dedmon starts, I think projecting it like 24-24 or something like that makes sense, in which case I would just get each of them, not in the same lineup, but I would just play both. But assuming Robinson's starting, I don't expect to go that route with Dedmon.
Okay. How many Miami Heat guys are you willing to get to in a lineup? Because I know that we've talked about 3 very recently. I have a sneaky suspicion you're not setting 3 today.
No, I'll probably go 4.
Okay. That makes sense.
Normally I would say I don't hate 5, but with being a 7-game slate, and also having Phoenix,
yeah,
it just gets to a point where, like, for example, the top 5 Miami guys are Robinson, Vincent, Oladipo, Highsmith, and Butler. Let's say I have Robinson, Oladipo, Vincent, and Highsmith. I would rather just have a different guy than Jimmy Butler. Yeah. Or, if I have, Butler, Oladipo, Robinson, Vincent, I would probably rather have like Amadou Diallo than Haywood Highsmith in that one lineup.
Fair. Ultimately, I think the summary is play a lot of Miami because they don't have enough guys to play today.
Yep,
Anything else you want to add for the Heat?
The juice box said, "What if I told you I'm fading Miami?" And I just immediately think back to the Memphis game from like, I don't know, 2016, where they had like, back before I was even using an optimizer, I was just like building by hand. And it's like, oh, Memphis has 6 guys, so everybody's going to play nothing but Memphis. I'll just make a really good lineup that doesn't have Memphis and just get destroyed because like everybody on Memphis played 40 minutes. But yeah, I hope you're playing the same contest as me.
Yeah, I mean, the pricing today is the problem. Everything's a benefit for Miami. You're one or two of these guys have to fall into a decent game, basically by default. So, and that's the reason that the ownership is at 200% on DraftKings. That implies that, there's 2 guys in every lineup. I think that that's very reasonable. My boom percentages are quite high. You're going to expect a lot of these guys to tack on 10 on top of their 5X. So we move it along to the Charlotte Hornets. They are 8-point dogs in Toronto, 229 total. Gordon Hayward still doubtful. We don't have Kelly Oubre for a while. Not a ton of ownership coming in here. LaMelo and Rozier both get to around 10% on both sites. To me, these guys for the Hornets are just GPP fillers. There are no real priorities for me. One of these guys from the starting lineup is probably going to pop up in random stuff, but I don't have anybody that I'm like, oh, I should definitely get to that guy today.
Yeah, same here. Nothing looks that good for me. It's not like it's a bad matchup or anything, but LaMelo coming in at 10K looks fine. But I also know that I prefer James Harden. I prefer SGA. I would probably rather get to Mitchell and Dame as well. So it just becomes tough. Obviously you have a very high ceiling for LaMelo. I am a little concerned about his lack of rebounding so far this season, but it's not, that big of a sample. So I'm trying not to read too much into it, but I do think that having a center on the floor for most minutes is hurting his fantasy production a bit, but still obviously a high usage guy, a lot of assist opportunities, should play a lot of minutes if he can avoid foul trouble. All that's great. But, again, he kind of just looks like another guy, and he is getting some ownership. He's actually projected for more ownership than both of Harden and SGA, and I have him projected behind them both. So it just is going to make it tough to want to get there. Rozier, Plumlee, McDaniels, Washington, they're all reasonable differentiation plays. They should play a lot of minutes. I expect around 30 from Plumlee. I expect around 32 from McDaniels, around 33, 34 from Washington, probably around 36 from Rozier. But it's just this slate just sort of forces you into that stars and scrubs build. And there's so many cheap guys. It's not like there's 2 really good value plays that are cheap. And if one of them fails, like, half the field is screwed. There's so many cheap guys, like enough of them are going to come through where you kind of just get into this situation where you need raw points from the rest of your lineup. And you're going to kind of just end up with like Terry Rozier versus, Damian Lillard or something. And the point per dollar aspect isn't really going to matter.
We got a super chat from Goods. He said, DK last man in, Strus or Bay?
Just projection wise, Strus.
And then John Bryant said, can you rank Powell on today's slate compared to Miami value and Diablo?
Worse.
Yeah.
I mean, like Powell looks fine, but you're talking about somebody that is like 48 or 4,900 and probably playing around 28, 30 minutes, but could certainly play less compared to guys that are 75% of that salary and cannot play less unless Udonis Haslem is playing big minutes.
Yeah. And then Diallo is just not comparable to Norm Powell today,
like
but I'd rather have Diallo.
If somehow you have a lineup and you have to decide between Diallo and Powell straight up, then it's Powell. But it comes down to like, what else are you getting with Diallo?
Yeah, I mean, if Diallo's starting, they're probably playing comparable minutes, and they are also comparable per minute guys.
Right.
One of which,
as far as the Strus versus Bay thing, like the answer for me is Strus. He just projects better and everything. But like it's one of those situations where like Strus is getting 9 times the ownership of Bay. So in one lineup, if you need to differentiate, I think you can comfortably say that he's not outscoring Bay that frequently. But in most lineups, I'm just going to be taking Strus because he projects better.
One final super chat here. DK single entry, Diallo and Hayes, or Stewart and Terrence Mann? Stewart and Mann for me.
Who's Hayes? I'm completely
Killian.
Oh, Killian. I was thinking Jackson, and I was like, Doesn't seem right. So Diallo and Hayes or Stewart. I think it's close. I'd probably go Stewart and Man.
Yeah, same. Toronto side, they're basically all like 12% owned on DraftKings. Siakam, Van Vliet, Anunoby, Trent, and Barnes. I'd be happy to get to all of them. I still want to cycle through these guys because a matchup against Charlotte is fantastic. I'm getting to a ton of Siakam. I'm very happy about that. Anunoby is my second most exposed guy on the FanDuel side. But when it comes to Toronto, I'm just happy to have these dudes. It's a ton of minutes. Even if they're doing a weird thing with their rotation, we're still talking like 34 plus in a plus matchup against a bad defense.
Yeah. I like them more this morning than I do right now, just because of all the value that opened up. I am also, we talked about it this morning. I'm a little bit concerned by the rotation they ran last game, where all of Boucher, Koloko, Flynn, Young, and Achua and Hernan Gomez played off the bench. But I still think you're just going to see big minutes from these guys. I went 38 on Siakam, 37 apiece on Anunoby and Van Vliet, 36 on Trent, 34 on Barnes. It makes them all look good. They're all pulling double-digit ownership, and they probably should. Siakam projects the best by a pretty good margin for me, but also center only. So that drives up, he's expensive, and that also drives up the opportunity cost on him. But any of those guys look good. I like the ceilings that they give you as far as rounding out your lineups go.
Yeah, that's sort of where I'm at. I'm going to cycle through them in a bit, in a way, but they don't look the same way they did earlier today, just because that mid-tier is different now than it was. But by all, do not feel bad at all about seeing any one of the Toronto guys pop up, because it's a great spot against Charlotte. Anything else here?
No, definitely not.
They just seem pretty easy to actually talk about. So we're going to talk a little bit about BetMGM. They are the sponsor of this show. Got a pretty good deal for you guys if you're interested. And honestly, you should be, because this deal is fantastic. You're watching a DFS show. There's 2,200 of you here, 345 likes too. Hit that like button. If you're interested in 2 free months of Stokastic plus Platinum, you should pay attention right now. If you're in a legal betting state and you haven't signed up at BetMGM yet, follow the link in the description. You'll be able to get 2 free months of Stokastic plus Platinum and up to a $1,000 something from BetMGM. Terms may be used differently now. It may be something that we used to call risk-free. I have no idea what I'm supposed to call it now, but it hasn't changed. So, however you want me to go about that moving forward, I'm happy to do so. But for now, let's just say that it's the same thing that we've been saying. We just can't say it like that. Is that a good read for everybody? Is that better? Yeah. So anyway, you should do this. And here's why. By taking this chance, you'll make your deposit. You'll put your bet in. My expectation is you should put it on an underdog. And honestly, a pretty sizable one. You can take that shot. If it wins, all that money just stays in your account. You're right as rain. You got a really nice bankroll. If it loses, they put it back in something. Site credit? We'll go with site credit. That sounds better. Site credit seems like words that we can use now. Anyway, that's the deal right now. I hope I didn't make it too confusing for you. Let's just let the key piece be 2 free months of Stokastic plus Platinum. That is an incredible value for you guys. How's that, Jordan? You good? Yeah, there you go. Allrat with the super chat. Strus and Shamit or Diallo and Bridges in DK cash?
Strus, Shamit, or Diallo, Bridges? Probably Strus, Shamit, but
yeah.
Both sides look good. That would kind of just it would just come down to projection, but I imagine they're very similar.
Yeah, I don't get. It feels like Bridges is the least likely scenario of that group.
So it's
that's why I like the other side.
Right. The way that I was kind of thinking it was just floor also. Strus, barring foul trouble or anything stupid, should play a lot of minutes. Same goes for Shamit. Diallo, you kind of don't really know. If he starts, I'm expecting 26 to 28, but it's the Pistons. They could do any number of things that screw you over there. And then Bridges is getting a lot of minutes, obviously, because it's Bridges, but he's also the most expensive. So it's kind of the uncertainty around Diallo's playing time that would make me lean towards Strus and Shamit, assuming that medium projections are close.
My filler arc said, is it a steak dinner? That's the reward? Probably didn't get that joke. You'd be right.
Chad Counts said, why doesn't Josh have a trophy in his background? Well, when he wins, he got a shirt for beating me once, but other than that, I got the trophy. He got to tag along and watch me win.
I forgot to bring the trophy home from my parents' house when I was home 2 weeks ago from when I won the hoop shoot when I was 8 years old. And then the runner-up trophy that I had, which is sort of like Adam's trophy, for when I was 10 years old.
Yeah, I appreciate you not mentioning the Papa shot where you took me for like $200 in 10 minutes on that same trip.
That cash ended up in my wallet for like a very long time. I started throwing it around in random places. I was like, I gotta get out of it. It's too thick in my wallet.
Yeah.
That did happen though, pretty aggressively too. I mean, Adam's got a fake trophy behind him. So why are we? He is not the MMA champion. That's a participation trophy. Check the record books, folks. Check the record books. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 2.5-point favorites in Utah. 227 total. For Cleveland, it's pretty standard fare. No Dean Wade, no Ricky Rubio, and no, I don't remember who the last guy is that isn't playing. Dylan Windler. There we go. No real ownership coming in here either. 10% basically to Mitchell, Garland, Mobley. And that feels about right. It's a good matchup against Utah, but I don't really see anybody from Cleveland standing out here.
No, I think it's just another like tournament team. There's obviously good high upside plays here, starting with, I think, Donovan Mitchell at 9,600, only pulling 9% ownership. He's going to look good here. Utah's not a good team defensively. Nice pace up spot for Cleveland. Mitchell is going to play a lot of minutes. He's a really good point per minute guy. And, we talked about it this morning. I'm not doing anything with his projection because he's going back to Utah. But if you are somebody that is in the narratives, stuff like that actually does make at least some semblance of sense since he's going to be controlling how often he shoots. But one way or the other, even if this game were on a neutral floor, the matchup against Utah looks really good. And I do think that at 9 to 10% ownership, the upside that Mitchell offers is pretty appealing in tournaments. Evan Mobley looks good at 6,300. Jared Allen looks good at 6,200. The problem is just with Allen, you have Orlando Robinson taking up a center spot. You have one of the Phoenix guys getting in there a lot. You have Yusuf Nurkic, who's $100 less. You have Pascal Siakam at 10-1, who looks fantastic against Charlotte. So it's just impossible to say that, you love getting to Jared Allen here. Mobley getting the most ownership, Garland also getting 8%. Like any of those guys look good, but it's more so just to differentiate your lineups as opposed to building around them.
On the Utah side, there's no Kelly Olynyk in this one, which is kind of important. No Colin Sexton, no Talen Horton-Tucker, no Udoka Azubuike, if that matters to you. It shouldn't. There is no ownership coming in on DraftKings. 4% to Markkanen is the high mark, and he's 9,700 today. At least you have enough money to get to him. He's 20% owned on FanDuel because he's only 8,200 there. If you want to get to Markkanen, by all means. I have a hard time wanting to get to Utah, which is really crazy to me considering I gave Jared Vanderbilt and Walker Kessler more minutes today, and they're still not interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this morning when we talked about it, it was like, well, I don't like the matchup, but they're interesting just because they could play a lot of minutes, expecting them both to start alongside each other. Then you have this big Cleveland front court where maybe they play a few more minutes alongside each other than normal. But now with all the news we've gotten, I kind of don't care. Like Jared Vanderbilt, the problem is just like Vanderbilt at 5,500, he can go out there and score 30, 32 DraftKings points, and it's just going to be irrelevant. I would say still that, the gap between him and Isaiah Stewart's probably a little too big, with Isaiah Stewart getting 10 times the ownership. But also, I certainly like Stewart better, so I get it. I mean, it's really tough to get to anything here against a slow, very solid defensive Cleveland team.
And then we get to Phoenix, 12-point dogs in Golden State, 229 total. For the Phoenix Suns, it got worse. They are the Miami of the West. No Chris Paul, no Devin Booker, no Cam Johnson, no Cam Payne. A bad day to be a Cam. And then we got DeAndre Ayton out. Still have a Q tag on Landry Shamet and on Torrey Craig, which I don't know what happens if both of those guys end up out, but I've got them in for now. We're getting a ton of ownership coming into this game. Bridges is 25 to 40%, depending on which site we're looking at. Shamet is mildly underrepresented on FanDuel, at least to me, 23% owned on DK. I like him quite a bit. Dwayne Washington is 50% owned across both sites. Like the pricing here. Jock Landale, who I think we all assume is starting at center, 23% owned on DraftKings at 3,200, 35% owned on FanDuel at 3,900. I guess, I mean, start wherever you want.
So, I mean, the first thing, and you mentioned it, is if Craig or Shamet get ruled out, this really becomes a mess. But assuming that those guys are in, Dwayne Washington at 4,200, I think, is just where you start. Well, one way or the other, I think that's where you start. No Booker or Paul on the floor this year. You've gotten 183 minutes for Washington, 35.7% usage rate, 36.7% assist percentage, 1.2 DraftKings points per minute. He's only 4,200, point guard and shooting guard eligible. So he's not cutting into, a lot of those good point guards that we've talked about necessarily. He looks really, really, really good. Mikal Bridges should play a ton of minutes. He's still only averaged 0.83 DraftKings points per minute with an 18.5% usage rate without Booker and Paul, but he should just be out there for so many minutes. And then obviously if he's, shooting above average from three, he's going to put up a big score in a hurry, but just being out there for 38 minutes or so at 6,200 is going to make him look pretty good. Landry Shamet at 5K, assuming he goes, I think there's some sticker shock because it's Landry Shamet and he's 5K, but like you and I were talking about this morning, he's just a different player in this situation. His role on this team when they're healthy makes him a bad fantasy option. It's not that he's a bad fantasy producer because he can't do things that produce fantasy points. Without those two on the floor, he's played 227 minutes. He has a 22.7% usage rate, a 20% assist percentage. He's averaged just shy of a fantasy point per minute, and he should be playing a lot of minutes here, assuming that that he's good to go. So I think that he looks very good also. Did you say that you're expecting Landale to start?
I assumed it was Landale, but I went 24-24 on him and Biyombo, which makes me like Biyombo.
Yeah, I mean, it's been Biyombo previously, unless I'm wrong about the last.
I mean, Landale's been the guy that's actually playing center, and Biyombo has not been playing at all. So I'm just assuming they're going to Landale for this ridiculous situation. But like I said, I went 24-24, and I am getting to Biyombo as well.
Yeah, I mean, for now, until we hear otherwise, I'm expecting it to be Biyombo because all four times that Ayton's been out, we've had Biyombo start, and people have kind of expected it to be Landale. And last time Ayton was out, Biyombo played 31 minutes to Landale 17. We've actually kind of gotten some weird like foul trouble and stuff for Biyombo where it's limited his minutes in a couple of those starts. But I'm expecting him to start, and if he does, I'm probably going to go like 26-22 in favor of Biyombo. At 3K, it makes him look good. I'm still going to like Landale at 3,200 as well, but it just creates a situation where if Landale's going to be 10 times as popular as Biyombo, and then, even if we get news Biyombo starting and that comes down a bit, I still think Landale's going to get more ownership, and it makes me want to get to Biyombo as well.
Yeah. Like I have 24% of both guys right now, which is well over on Biyombo, but like slightly under on Landale. The reason that I think they're going to go to Landale here and that they don't in normal situations is because normally they're putting Bismack Biyombo out there with like real NBA players and not just random NBA players like it is today. So I think they kind of want like the smarts of Bismack Biyombo when you're out there playing with Paul and Booker and Bridges. Whereas now, who gives a shit who's going out there to play when it's Landry Shamet, Torrey Craig, and Damian Lee or something?
Yeah, I mean, that's reasonable.
I don't have I obviously have no idea. So that's probably the real answer here. That said, I want to get to both of them. Do you have any major interest in anybody else here? Is it like a Damian Lee day, a Dario Saric day? What else do you see for this team?
So part of that's going to depend on Torrey Craig. Like, looking at who's good on a point per minute basis, Josh Okogie's over a fantasy point per minute this year without Paul and Booker. He's been good in general. He could certainly play a lot of minutes if Torrey Craig is out. Even, if Craig's in, you could get an uptick in playing time from Okogie. But if he's out, then I would really like the playing time for him. Dario Saric played 26 minutes last game. He's 3,300. He's played a total of 106 minutes without Booker or Paul on the floor, 0.72 DraftKings points per minute, but that's also on 41% true shooting. That number basically has to come up. Damian Lee, 0.7 fantasy points per minute, should see good playing time as is, and then even more if you were to take out Shamet or Craig. So, I think the priorities right now are Washington, Bridges, Shamit, and a center.
Yeah.
Then I think the next tier is like Dario Saric, followed by Craig, Lee, Okogie. But if you take out Shamit or Craig, I think Okogie steps up. I think Lee steps up.
All righty. Super chat from Jose Morales. It's unclear if Diallo starts, so who would you rather play, Highsmith or Diallo? Well, it'll be pretty clear at 7 o'clock when the Pistons game gives out the starting lineups at 6:30. So I would not worry about that at all. It's less clear that Highsmith starts than Diallo for you by the time you get to lock.
Right, that's true. But yeah, like I wouldn't care right now.
Yeah. Yeah, like you're going to have the information that you want, at least the way that it's worded, but at 6:30. So all we're doing is just speculating about what you're going to know for sure. Anything else for Phoenix?
Nope.
On the Golden State end, this one's pretty easy. Their guys are back, and that means Curry's in, Clay's in, no Kuminga, no JaMychal Green, no Wiseman. Iguodala is available. The highest owned guy projected on the Warriors right now is 1% owned Draymond. Now, to me, that's wrong. But at the same time, they're playing a Phoenix Suns team that isn't real. So limiting Draymond in the second half isn't exactly the craziest scenario in the world. If I'm getting to anybody, it's probably Draymond. I want no part of Golden State today.
Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at too. Curry coming back doesn't really have a negative impact on Draymond, but at 6,500, he just still doesn't look particularly good. Same kind of thing with Kevon Looney at 5,600. It's just really, really tough to get there, especially with all the good center options on this slate. So yeah, I mean, it's Draymond or nothing, but probably nothing for me.
Yeah, I don't really have much else to say here. Would you want do you have any interest in $9,400 Steph on FanDuel at no ownership?
That is kind of appealing just because it's so easy to get there salary wise.
Yeah.
But also, like, even if he plays full minutes, he would kind of just be comparable to these other guys. And you're in terms of projection, and you're just taking on a lot of risk. So, I mean, top heavy, large field tournaments, you're not wrong for doing it. I still kind of doubt that I would.
Anything else for Golden State?
Nope.
We shall keep it moving. We'll be able to zip through this one pretty quickly, too. The Orlando Magic are 8-point dogs in Portland, 228 total for Orlando. Bull off the injury report, as I told everybody earlier this morning. John Isaac is going to be playing a game with the G League affiliate either today or tomorrow, which is exciting to see. So he could be back soon. No Chuma Okeke. Admiral Schofield not on the injury report. Bull just muddies the waters, and I don't even think it matters all that much. I don't find anybody on Orlando to look all that good, which is a shame considering I get to Orlando a lot. So I assume they smack Portland and it costs me, but I don't have much of anything here. I can't see Franz or Paolo or even Wendell Carter Jr. on FanDuel as a priority today.
Yeah, same boat. Banchero leads the way on DraftKings at 5% owned, 5% chance of being optimal. Franz Wagner has a 3% chance of being optimal. Fultz is at 2. Carter's at 1. There's just nothing really here. And it doesn't have anything to do with them. Like, they're pretty much correctly priced. It's a perfectly fine spot against Portland. If this were a slate where, like I said this morning, if like all the questionable guys end up playing, I would have some interest in Orlando. But basically, we've gotten like every questionable guy ruled out. And so as a result, you take somebody like Wendell Carter Jr. that looks fine at 6,400. And it's like, oh, well, if I'm going to play a bunch of him, what am I giving up? Like, I'm giving up the value at center, or I'm giving up Yusuf Nurkic at this price point, or I'm giving up Siakam at the top or Embiid at the top. Like, it just makes it really, really difficult to get there. And that's kind of how every position is, where you have correctly priced guys on a slate where there are so many mispriced.
By the way, one thing I want to mention, going back to Golden State, we got to remember Curry had a shoulder injury. Like, yeah. I don't expect him to be. The limitation is the fact that they're playing a Phoenix Suns team without any real basketball players on it. I don't think it's Steph Curry's cardio.
Right. I'll say I also tend to, with star players, when they come back, I tend to not expect a minutes restriction, especially when they start. Like if they're like, oh, Steph's coming off the bench, then clearly. But normally with star players, most coaches, I think, have the tendency where they practice until they're good to go, and then they just go, especially when it's not lower body.
Yeah, if this were an ankle, a knee, a quad, that'd be different for me, but to me, the more limiting factor is the fact that they're playing a Phoenix team that is not represented by NBA players. We go to Portland, who's basically just another version of Toronto today. Their starters are going to play big minutes. Dame and Nurk are both 23% owned on DraftKings. The other three guys are all in single digits. Dame's also 25% owned on FanDuel. We get Simons and Jeremy Grant into the teens. Simon's only 6,100 on FanDuel. I think he's kind of going a little bit underrepresented on DK for today, but it's more of a GPP play than anything else. How do you feel about the ownership on Dame and comically priced low Yusuf Nurkic?
Yeah, so the Nurkic one is just interesting because like he's clearly wildly underpriced, but I also don't know how much I'll end up getting to if he's going to be 25% owned. Like I could see it just being like, okay, well, I'm going to jam in Robinson and then I'm going to just play Phoenix centers or Siakam or something and kind of just get away from that ownership. Hope that Nurkic doesn't go nuts. It's just like if he hits his projection of like 37 DraftKings points on most slates, that would be really good. Like anytime you have somebody projected for 6 times his salary, he's going to get ownership and he's going to be a good play. But there's just a lot of ways this can play out where you feel really good about it. Like you're looking at the DraftKings app, you have the fire emoji on Nurkic, you're happy with your play because you got 38 points. And it's just like, how am I, 40 points behind, 40 points out of first? And it's because Orlando Robinson matched him and then Siakam beat him by 20 or something. It's just pretty easy to see that playing out. I'd be a lot more interested if that ownership comes down. With where it's at, though, I think there's a pretty good chance I kind of just end up under the field on Nurkic and going more stars and scrubs at center. Lillard is sort of the same for me. Like I like Lillard a lot at 9,500. It's a good spot, reasonable price tag, should play a lot of minutes, isn't going to be difficult to get to him, but he's just getting 2 to 3 times the ownership of Donovan Mitchell, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, James Harden, all these guys. And it's just sort of like, okay, I'll take the field and, shave some of my Damian Lillard exposure and get more of those guys.
We're on the same page.
But like, it's not to be clear, it's not a Dame thing. Like if you told me Donovan Mitchell was 25% and Dame was 8, I'd be saying the same exact thing where I play more Dame. It's just, I think these guys are all so similar, especially in terms of their upside, their range of outcomes, that I kind of just want to go where the field isn't.
Especially on a day like today where we know the field is going so concentrated to the Miami side, the Phoenix side, to be able to just not take Damian Lillard and turn him into Donovan Mitchell at, 35% of the same ownership is just a much easier way to get different in a lineup than to try to choose a different value option somewhere else.
It's kind of the same thing I was saying about Jimmy Butler. Like we talk a lot about paying attention to the ownership of your lineup and not just of individual players. But what's going to end up happening is when you think through who's in your lineup, like if you think in terms of for anybody that's hand built and, kind of does like the bottom up approach where you're starting with the best value and then going from there. Like if you think about that, the first spots getting into your lineup are going to be like your Dwayne Washingtons, your Orlando Robinsons, these cheap guys where they clearly just look like the best point per dollar values. Yeah. So then knowing those guys are in your lineup, either you're going to just end up playing this lineup that's like 40% owned across the board, or you're going to be getting away from Jimmy Butler and Damian Lillard and these guys and trying to take a stand there. It just, to me, seems a lot easier. There's a lot more alternatives in their price range than there are in the guys that project 8 to 10 times their salary, like Dwayne Washington and Orlando Robinson.
2,700 plus people in here right now, 438 likes. Seems like we're going to hit that 500 mark. If you haven't hit it yet, and 2,300 of you haven't, what are you waiting for, by the way? Let's get us up over 500. And if you want to run it up even higher than that, I wouldn't be mad. Zolo Baxter hit us with the super chat. Best spend up on DK, single entry GPP. Thanks, Luca. Yeah. You have all the money in the world to spend up for the guy that's going to project like 10 points better than everybody else on the slate. Speaking of 10:30 start, Dallas Mavericks 1.5 point favorites in LA, 223 total. We've got Luka back for this one. No Dorian Finney-Smith, no Maxi Kleber, no Josh Green. 25% ownership going to Luka on DK, 20 on FanDuel. I will be getting to Luka pretty aggressively today on FanDuel. You get point guard, shooting guard, so that really helps given all the value being concentrated in certain spots on the FanDuel side. But for me, it's just pretty obvious. He projects so much better than everybody else, and you have all the salary in the world to do so today.
Yeah, I kind of think he's going a little bit under-owned.
Yeah.
Like he's coming in at 25, 26% on DraftKings. We have him with about a 29% chance of being optimal. I could also see, even though that is healthy ownership as well, you don't have the same sort of pivots for him in terms of raw points. So it's kind of similar to those value pieces where the best value guys, like there's no similar point per dollar projections. And for Luka, there's no similar raw point projection. So, again, I'm going to be wanting to get to Luka. I'm going to be wanting to get to those best point per dollar plays. It's probably just going to make me squeeze the get below the field on those mid-range guys that are getting ownership, Nurkic, Butler, Lillard, guys like that, because to me, Luka's a bigger priority and the best value plays are a bigger priority.
Do you see yourself getting to anything else from Dallas?
No.
Yeah, same. I got a couple shares of Tim Hardaway, which I don't love, but shooting guard, small forward. Spencer Dinwiddie just looks terrible.
Over 2.5 rebounds for Dinwiddie this morning. I have no idea if that's even still there, but that seemed ridiculous.
I got him at 3.5. So
yeah, I think
great bet.
We did too. It was at one point, I think it was after my videos, but at one point it was like our top DraftKings bet in BetPro.
We close it out with the Clippers, who are kind of a weird team today. No Paul George, no Luke Kennard. We saw Terrence Mann get the start on Sunday. They finally booted Reggie Jackson out of there. This game's at 10:30. I have no concept of what they're going to do there, but I'm going to assume that they go to Terrence Mann once again. Terrence Mann is 11% owned on DraftKings right now at 4K. Can we just start there?
Yeah, I mean, it actually kind of makes sense to me. We have him with about a 12% chance of being optimal. It's just a function of Dwayne Washington, Gabe Vincent. I keep somehow forgetting Vincent when I mention the top value plays, but Gabe Vincent and Washington, both being point guards. You have good payout point guards, and then you also have the value at other positions like Orlando Robinson. So it makes sense that he's kind of a secondary value option. I don't think that he's quite as good a point per dollar play as some of the others.
I think he's getting underrepresented pretty aggressively. I have him 1.1 fantasy points behind Dwayne Washington.
Wait, you had what?
I have him 1.1 fantasy points behind Dwayne Washington. I gave him 32 minutes, 0.86 fantasy points per minute. Am I crazy?
Yes.
How many minutes did you give Dwayne Washington?
I haven't done that game yet, but we have 33 minutes going to Terrence Mann. We have 27 going to Dwayne Washington. We have Dwayne Washington by 7 DraftKings points.
So I have 25 for Dwayne Washington right now.
Yeah, but I think you're just low on Dwayne Washington's points per minute.
30% usage,
or both. You might be both.
30% usage, 33% assist rate for Dwayne Washington. I got him at 1.13 FanDuel points per minute. So
okay, you might be high on Terrence Mann.
I really don't think that I am. 16% usage, 14% assist rate, 0.86. Let's see, 28.5 and 32. 0.89 DraftKings points per minute here. Maybe a little high.
Yeah, so I mean, he's at 0.84 in a limited sample with Kawhi on and George off.
Like, obviously, if I give Dwayne Washington 2 more minutes, it's going to be like a 3.5 point gap, 4 point gap, and then it's going to look a little bit more normal.
That's what the difference is.
Yeah. Ultimately, like, I to get a starting point guard that's 4K, that's not like a total 0 as a per minute guy, I'm shocked to see it at 11. It just feels too low. Like, is he a worse play than Max Strus today?
Well, for Strus, it's the positions, I think, but no.
Sure. But I mean, we're talking about like 2.5 times the ownership. Like, he's probably pretty comparable to Gabe Vincent at a third of the ownership, $700 more. I think he's a really interesting way to get a little bit different here, assuming that he's continuing to start. Like, that underrepresentation is interesting to me. And I kind of like the idea of holding a Terrence Mann spot if anything else pops up throughout the rest of the day.
Yeah, but you're going to have so many Phoenix spots, it's not going to matter.
Right. It's a good point. Anyway, I think Terrence Mann's getting underrepresented at 11%. I'm just going to put that out there right now. What do you want to do with the rest of this Clippers team? Kawhi looks solid enough. He seems to be pulling about 20% ownership on DraftKings. Zubats at 5,200 on DraftKings is going wildly underrepresented. I can see a very easy scenario where you want to just take that Nurkic ownership and go to Zubats, but obviously we have 100 other centers that are free today.
Yeah,
go with wherever you want.
Yeah, Kawhi and Powell getting some ownership makes sense. Powell should play 28-ish minutes. He's 4,900, shooting guard, small forward, pulling 12%. I thought he looked a lot better earlier today, before he got more value, but he's still fine, should land in some lineups. Kawhi at 8,700 did play 38 minutes last game, so that's great to see. He's pulling 20% ownership. He's another one where I like him here, but I think it's likely that I kind of just give up that ownership to be different elsewhere because there are so many alternatives in that price range. and it is a very slow matchup with Dallas, so that's not helping either. Zubats, though, 5.5% ownership. I understand why he's low owned, but he should play a lot of minutes here. You don't have Paul George. He's played like 85 minutes without George and with Kawhi this year, averaging 1.08 DraftKings points per minute. Overall, without George, he's played 475 minutes, 1.06. He's likely to play big minutes here and just isn't getting ownership. So like you said, moving some of that Nurkic ownership to him makes sense. There's still a chance that I end up, again, just going like either, being very concentrated at center with like Siakam, Robinson, Landale / Biyombo. But I do like using Zubats as a tournament pivot if you do end up going to like that mid-range price range.
Anybody else you want to touch on here for the Clippers that stands out for you?
Nope.
All righty, folks. Deeper dive in the books, 550 likes, 3,000 people here. Stick around. NBA Live Before Lock is coming up next. You get Greg, you get Eric, all the way up to 7:30. Good luck tonight. It's going to be a doozy. Have some fun. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the January 10th edition of the NBA BetPro video. I am your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And if you missed it yesterday, this is a new video that I'm going to be bringing to you 5 days a week using our newest tool that is available for player prop betting on the Stokastic website. This is a model that we've put together. The same people that do our DFS projections put this together. And it's a way to identify the best player prop bets across sites. You can also use it to identify the best bets on a given site that you are looking to bet on. For example, here you have the best bets tab that's going to go through all of the different sites and give you the bets that are most likely to make you money. But you can also go, site by site, BetMGM, Caesars, DraftKings, FanDuel, etc. Go through, find the best bets on whichever site you are looking to bet on. We also have a few different statistics in here that are useful for you. You have the win percentage, which is clearly the percentage of the time that we expect the bet to win. The expected value is the expected value of the bet, the ROI of the bet. But a couple useful ones over here that are different. bet percentage gives you the percentage of your bankroll that we recommend you bet based on how likely it is to win, what the expected ROI is, etc. And then SEV is the percentage by which your bankroll is expected to grow. So one thing that can be really difficult when you're getting into sports betting or really in anything, I mean, it's difficult even still with DFS, is bankroll management. And this is a good way to determine how much you should be wagering on a given bet. So that's useful. And then also we've recently added some color coding to this so that you are aware of if a bet you're looking at if a player that you're looking to bet on has teammates that are questionable, for example, then maybe you're not going to want to bet the under, because if those guys get ruled out, that's going to be a bad bet. We have color coding on guys now to give you an idea. Kevon Looney, because Stephen Curry is questionable, for example, is highlighted in yellow here. So that's a recent addition, but this should be a very, very useful tool for you. If you are getting into sports betting, or even if you have been doing it for a while, should be a useful tool. And if you sign up now, you can get a 7-day free trial. Check it out, see what works for you. Should help you right out of the gate, most likely, make some more money. So be sure to sign up and take advantage of the 7-day free trial. Now, in these videos, I am going to go through BetMGM, Caesars, DraftKings, and FanDuel, talking about what we currently have projected as the best bets on those sites. Starting with BetMGM, Kevon Looney projected for 3.2 assists. The line on BetMGM is over 2.5 assists at plus 100. So since we have him projected over 2.5 assists, that's going to look good. Now, keep in mind, Stephen Curry is questionable here, but I'm not overly concerned about that in this situation because we're recommending the over on Looney. So if that's assuming Curry is in, if Curry is out, then things look even better because you should get more assist opportunities for Looney. If he's out, you also probably get more playing time. But in the games that Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green have played this year, Looney's averaged about 24 minutes per game. And based on his assist percentage in those games, projects for about 3.2 assists here. So we recommend wagering about 5.5% of your bankroll. You are expected to increase your bankroll by 0.27%, and this bet has an expected ROI of 7%. Moving over to Caesars, the top bet here is also that Kevon Looney bet, but because I just talked about that, the next best is LaMelo Ball, projected for 7.3 assists. The line is under 8.5 at -145. So we have this bet projected to win 62.2% of the time with an expected ROI of about 5.2%. It is recommended that you bet about 5.4% of your bankroll, and you can expect your bankroll to grow by 0.18% on this bet. Again, goes without saying that you also can make the Kevon Looney bet if you're on Caesars. The odds are actually a little bit better there as well at +104 instead of +100.
Yo, what is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic NBA Live Before Lock Show. If you guys didn't like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel, for the last two people, Josh Engleman and Adam Scherer, now is your time to do it. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, because Eric Lindquist and I, we're about to break down the NBA slate. And it's kind of a weird one just from a standpoint of how often, Eric, are you and I, especially on slates that have, even just 4 or more games, we're talking about all the injuries. We're kind of just playing this one straight. There aren't that many injuries to talk about today. The Suns ones are going to be pertinent for later, but by and large, we've got the news that we were kind of looking for today, and it didn't look like we are going to have that earlier. So how are you feeling about tonight's slate?
It's kind of gross when you have this much value, when you have this many pieces that stand out. You're trying to find that one piece of deviation in your lineups because there's a lot of really good chalk. I don't know how you look at anything on the Miami side, on the Suns side. I don't know how you look at it and say this isn't good chalk. So we'll see. Maybe Detroit got a little bit more interesting this morning. They were gaining a lot of attention. It's a massive blowout potential that exists there for some of the starters, but I assume most of the guys are going to be playing most of that game. And I think that we can find a couple of pieces maybe there that are lower owned than they might have been otherwise, but we're going to be waiting on like Shamet news. That's going to be something that matters a drastic amount to my lineups. I mean, welcome to today's slate. We can play everybody, probably play 100% Luka. Here we go.
Yeah, and it's really dumb when the piece of injury news we're waiting on, and ones that kind of matter for the purposes of this slate, it's Landry Shamet, Torrey Craig, pretty important pieces. And here is why, though, because people might be looking at us and saying, who gives a shit about Torrey Craig and Landry Shamet? When do we ever care about these guys? Here's why it matters for today. The Suns injury report. We know Jay Crowder's been away from the team, but the players that have actually been there, Cam Johnson's out, DeAndre Ayton's out, Cam Payne is out, Chris Paul is out, Devin Booker is out. Obviously, the big 3 for the Suns being out opens up all kinds of playing time and usage with there being no Paul, no Booker, no Ayton. And then you start to say, like, okay, who are the backup players we could really expect to step into the starting lineup and play extended minutes? 2 of those guys are Landry Shamet and Torrey Craig. And then if they're also out, you're basically left with no point guards on the roster, because Shamet actually started at point guard last game. And what we've generally seen from the way the Suns run their rotation, they don't like to play Dwayne Washington alongside whoever else that plays point guard for them. If there is no Landry Shamet, we are left with, I guess, Dwayne Washington, maybe Damian Lee is the only players that could possibly run the point for them. So then we'd be looking at Dwayne Washington, who apparently has a 40% usage every single night. potentially playing 40 minutes and even would be somebody who's on the court in blowout situations. So when it comes to Shaman and Craig, like how important are these guys to our lineups?
Extremely. Look at the names that you're going to be considering otherwise as well. I mean, we have Ish Wainwright, Josh Okogie. Like there's legitimate massive implications to having Landry Shamet in or out. I think Dwayne Washington's going to be crazy popular no matter what happens. So I think that regardless of Landry Shamet, we're looking at Dwayne Washington being a huge piece of our lineups. Torrey Craig, the questionable situation there. So like it's just a cluster, and I think finding ways to kind of react to how your lineups are doing from the Detroit pieces I have interest in, the Miami pieces I have interest in. I think I'll be able to kind of like carve out what I'm supposed to do with my lineups. And we do have 3 games in that late night window. We actually have technically 4 when you add Cleveland and Utah. So weird to get a slate where you have 3 games that all lock before 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then you're waiting an hour and a half and you're going to be able to kind of react to how your lineups are doing. So for me, that's going to be a big part about what I do here in the next 48 minutes is just being like, all right, these are the plays that I absolutely cannot live without in the early window. I'll react to a lot of news, but considering 4 of the 7 games on this slate, we're probably going to have that Phoenix news by then. I don't really have to react too much to it right now.
Yeah, and also shout out to BetMGM, who is sponsoring our show today. So Eric and I, we're going to be looking at some bets later on the show as well, because I think we're going to have a little bit more liberty to just talk about the players that we like, as opposed to constantly having to adjust our lineups like we normally do during the show. So we're also going to be looking at some bets that we like, and we're still going to be doing our post-lock 30-minute show. But BetMGM, the sponsor of today's show, a couple perks for signing up over there. First of all, when you sign up using our link, you get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. But in addition to that, your first bet is insured up to $1,000. So even if it loses, you're going to be getting that back up to $1,000 on the first bet that you place over at BetMGM. Just make sure when you sign up, you use the link that we have below or the link that Jordan's about to throw into YouTube chat. You're going to need that to get your 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And that is going to come with our ownership, player projections, our lineup builder, our boom bust tool, everything that you guys are going to need to build winning DFS lineups. You're going to find after signing up over at BetMGM and getting a 2-month subscription to our site. But I want to ask you about the Suns, because what happens to this team if Shamet and Torrey Craig both end up playing? Just from this standpoint, like if you look at this team last game, I'm a little nervous about the minutes of Dwayne Washington because I don't know how to project it. He didn't play that much last game.
I feel okay about Dwayne Washington. I think Dwayne Washington's a piece that is pretty built in. Part of it is just he's such a good fantasy producer when he does get minutes, and you're missing Booker, you're missing Paul, a lot of the main beneficiary, DeAndre Ayton. It's pretty clear cut for me that Dwayne Washington at 4,700 on FanDuel is going to be a piece that I get to quite a bit. Over on DraftKings, 4,200 with multi-positional eligibility as well. He just fits into lineups really, really easily. The other pieces I don't necessarily feel like I need to be locked in on, and that's where the Clippers really kind of get interesting for me. We have Zubats at 5,200, and he just plays quote-unquote giga minutes. And there are opportunities for him now without Paul George out there. We just saw 37 minutes against Atlanta, and I think that that's more indicative with Dallas here. I mean, Zubats going up against Christian Wood on the interior. Powell has also been starting alongside Wood at times, and then just kind of coming off the bench, he's kind of a nothing, but starting alongside of him here recently has been an interesting phenomenon. I think Zubats is just kind of locked in. I doubt they go small in a lot of situations there again. And I feel pretty confident that at 5,200, he's a piece that I would have access to, a little bit more expensive than, if he's in a utility, a little bit more expensive than that of like a Torrey Craig or something of that nature. And then Terrence Mann is just a really good play, I think, regardless of what happens. 4K flat over on DK. Really stands out. 35 minutes absent Paul George. I mean, basically at a fantasy point per minute guy. He on the season has been right around 0.81, goes up a tiny, tiny bit without Paul George, but I think it's just a minutes thing. I mean, Reggie Jackson has fallen by the wayside, and I don't think that can be emphasized enough. 8 minutes in a competitive game against Atlanta. Pretty prominent there. Something that I just think he's going to be another piece I just get to weigh more of if that news doesn't come out where they're both out.
Who do you think is going to... So let's assume that we get the starting lineup for the Suns, and we've got Sham and Torrey Craig both in. If that is going to be the situation, what do you expect the starting 5 to be?
I mean, Bridges locked in.
Yes.
Landale or Biyombo locked in. One of the two. It doesn't really matter. They're only 200 apart on DK. Shamet, I would assume starts. Torrey Craig, I assume starts, and then I mean the fifth one's kind of a roulette wheel. I think people might just be expecting it to be Dwayne Washington. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think they could go Damian Lee as well. So there's an outside chance of that being the case. But when you look at the fantasy point per minute rate, 1.06 for Dwayne Washington, I think regardless of what happens with him starting or not, he's somebody I'll get to a lot of.
I assume Sarge. So I assume it's the same.
Oh, Sarge.
Starting.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So I assume the same. This is because I see
Landry,
people.
Landry playing point is what you're getting at. Yeah.
So I see people in chat saying to me, who's going to play the point guard minutes if it's not Washington? And I just don't know why the rotation be different than it is last game. Right? Because there was no Booker last game. There was no Chris Paul last game. There was no Cam Johnson. There was no Cam Payne. The difference in this game compared to last game is that DeAndre Ayton is out. And by the way, so I have my lineups right now. I have a good amount of Dwayne Washington. He's like my 8th most rostered player. But that still means I'm underweight to the field on him. And obviously that changes, by the way, in a big way if Landry Shamet is ruled out. Then he becomes, like my one of my 3 most rostered players or 4 most rostered players for sure. Mm-hmm. But I just look at the rotation for last game. It's hard for me to project him for many more minutes than he played last time.
That's fair. Lee is trash. That's kind of funny. Yeah, no, he's terrible, but he's also potentially playing his brother-in-law. Ooh, narrative street.
Yeah. So, and by the way, because I saw somebody in chat say, just to get back to it, who plays the point guard minutes if not Washington? The same guys who played the point guard minutes last game. Landry Shamet played point guard minutes. Damian Lee played point guard minutes. Washington played 25 minutes last game. And it's also hard for me to say that he's going to keep up a 40% usage rate. Play him in cash games. Play him in tournaments as well. I'm just going to be playing a little bit less of him than the field, unless Shamet is ruled out. Then it's, then he just ends up in almost all my lineups. But I'm kind of hoping Shamet plays, and then I could use him as a pivot off of Dwayne Washington, because I don't think people are going to play Shamet as much as they should play him if he does start.
I am 100% in agreement there. He on FanDuel is 5,600. Probably don't have to think about it as much over there. But for DraftKings purposes, he's definitely somebody I have circled, highlighted. And as I said, we have 4 games starting 9 p.m. Eastern time or later. Should be pretty easy to get myself to a little bit of 5K Landry Shamet for DraftKings purposes.
We got some super chats coming in, some questions as well in the Discord. And if you guys have any questions for us in Discord, at me. It's one of the perks of having Stokastic Plus Platinum membership. And I do think we're going to have time to get to those today, because this does not seem like the kind of slate where we're going to be responding or reacting to a whole ton of news. Not as many guys on the injury report as we normally see. But first from John Bryant, who are the best cash plays at each position on DraftKings? So a little different than what we normally get, where people ask us who we have the most exposure to at each position. Let's talk about the best cash plays at each position. So point guard for me, it's going to be Dwayne Washington, at least as far as cash goes.
Luka.
Well, here's what's hard, because they're both point guards, but you kind of want to have both of them.
You should play both.
All right. So let's say point guard. So point guard, we'll say Luka. Shooting
and
guard,
Dwayne Washington, you have shooting guard eligibility. That's what I was getting at.
So we'll say point guard, Luka, shooting guard, Dwayne Washington.
Yep.
You and I both on the same page with that. For small forward, I'm going to say Max Strus. I think you could also make a strong case for Mikal Bridges. Your lineup should probably have both of them in cash games. But if other guys get ruled out for the Suns, you're going to be playing Mikal Bridges there. But Strus, I think, is a good option. Bridges, another one. Anything you'd be adding to that?
Yeah, we're going to see that Miami starting lineup. If Haywood Highsmith is starting, I would want him. 3,100.
Power forward, we have Jimmy Butler. I think that's just a no-brainer.
Lock.
Absolutely. As easy as it gets. And same with center. Center, assuming that he starts, Orlando Robinson.
Orlando Robinson, and then I would probably have a utility going to Jock Landale.
You know what's weird? And I know you brought that up before. You assume Landale starts.
I did not say that. I said it doesn't matter who starts to me.
Oh, okay.
Because they're 200 apart, I would just play the other guy.
So what's really weird is that Landale's been ahead of Biyombo in the rotation as of late. Right? Yep. Landale's even started games alongside DeAndre Ayton. But what's been weird is in games that Ayton has missed, we've still seen Biyombo start over Landale, which is what kind of makes it hard to figure out the center scenario. I do think that Landale is more likely to start today. But it's definitely been a little bit weird how they've handled their center rotations. But either way, it's really hard for me to get away from Orlando Robinson in cash games, especially just how popular he is. I wouldn't want to not have him in my center spot to start the night, and it's the first game that locks. So you're going to have to make a decision, or it's 30 minutes, second game that locks on the slate. I think we're not going to have the Suns starting lineup by then, and I just wouldn't forego Orlando Robinson in cash.
No, you'll play him. You'll play Luka at the other point guard or at the other guard spot. You're going to play Dwayne Washington at shooting guard. I mean, this is probably the easiest cash day we've had in a very, very long time. The only thing that I think is in doubt is if you get a starting Haywood Highsmith, do you want him or do you want like flexibility and have like Saric in there? I think that's probably the only question I would have. Because Saric is 3,300, 200 away there from that late night window, but something tells me that I would probably just end up playing like double center, have the other power forward be Jimmy Butler, and just kind of move on with my life there. But it feels like a pretty clear-cut cash slate.
Yeah, and I mean, Haywood Highsmith, another guy also. I know it's a little different because there's so many guys out for the Heat, but he's started 4 games in a row and he scored 16, 12, 7, and 12 fantasy points in those games. I would feel a little bit different about him today, once again, because it's Bam Adebayo out, Tyler Hero out, and Kyle Lowry out. It's a lot of dudes who are out for this team. But Haywood Highsmith absolutely sucks as a fantasy producer.
I know he does. And maybe that's probably the tiebreaker in the decision is that if anything were to happen later on, you get an extra roster spot and just avoid Haywood Highsmith. I think for me, it's just like looking at Highsmith, absent Bam Adebayo, absent Kyle Lowry, absent Tyler Hero, just like you said. So for me, maybe the tiebreaker is just one extra roster spot. Don't lock it up early.
All right, let's hit on some of these questions that we have in Discord that came in. First, Miami High Life wants to know what forward 4K or less scores the most DK points. All right, so I'm going to... What's that?
What did he say?
What forward that costs 4K or less are we going to pick to score the most fantasy points on DraftKings?
Gotcha. I misheard something there, so I'm glad.
What did you think I said?
It doesn't matter. For me, it's Hamidou Diallo, but I do not like. I hated Hamidou Diallo this morning because he was pulling tons of ownership, and now I'm starting to get sucked back in. We have him at 17%, and if he doesn't start, I would be very surprised to see him at that kind of a number there. But at 3,500, somebody that's there that isn't Saric. I mean, Saric, I have a point higher for Saric, so I think that's who it would be. But Hamidou Diallo, pretty close to him.
Diallo is the answer for me as well, and I am overweight to him at the moment. Another guy who I think is a pretty good pivot off of Dwayne Washington for a cheaper price point. I project them similar, at least at the moment. Obviously, what's scary about that, though, is you get Shamet ruled out, and then all of a sudden, Dwayne Washington should be projected for infinitely more fantasy points. Well, not infinitely, but quite a bit more fantasy points than Hamidou Diallo. But at least as things stand now, I do like Diallo. Unfortunately, your guy is out today. Bojan Bogdanovic, in addition, Isaiah Livers is out. That is important just because it's one less wing that we have the Pistons to give minutes to. And then Jalen Duren's out in the front court. Marvin Bagley's out in the front court. Diallo played a bunch last game. I guess the big question here is, would he play garbage time? I think this game's, we don't talk too much about blowouts. This is probably one of the more likely blowout scenarios we have of the entire season. So how good do you feel about Diallo's minutes? And do you think he would potentially play in garbage time?
I'm kind of on the fence about it because I've been betting Jaden Ivey a lot this season. I'm on the over of his 14.5 points again this season. He's been a train wreck for me about the last month because Bojan started to get efficient. They started putting his points props around 21.5. Those were sad days. But Jaden Ivey started to see that usage trend up. He was close to 27% absent Cade Cunningham. The problem is he either gets in foul trouble or games get so out of whack that it's really hard to figure out if he's closing certain spots or not. Now, the Portland game, he played 27 minutes, but was in foul trouble the entire time. It then ended up being in like towards the end. Didn't matter because he played so bad. And I was just watching that being very, very sad, but he was at 13 points. I thought maybe he could get there. The Golden State one, they ended up winning. He obviously closed that one. San Antonio, that one as well was a little bit closer. He feels like a guy that just because he's a rookie, this team isn't going anywhere. They're already massively they're like 10-30. They're a horrible basketball team overall. I think Jaden Ivey ends up closing a lot of these spots, even over somebody else like a Diallo coming in. So that's where I get a little bit nervous. I mean, Alec Burks also has come in and played well in stints. I've watched way too much Detroit basketball is what it comes down to. But Alec Burks has played a lot in stints where I thought he was going to close and then he just didn't. And they brought Jaden Ivey back in spots where it was like a 15-point deficit. Maybe it's because it's more of a known quantity. They want to give Ivy a little bit more run. But I think this Hayes and Ivy thing, even if they're down 15 with like 3-4 minutes left, they've had a proclivity to keep those guys on the floor. So I'm probably in the camp where he doesn't close. But it doesn't really matter when you're talking about 3,500 on DraftKings. And my big concern with him this morning is that I thought there were like 8 or 9 guys that all looked pretty similar to him, but he was the one who just miraculously was pulling 30% ownership. He's now down to 17. I could see that even coming in lower if he doesn't start. You give me a 10% Hamidou Diallo, we're having a completely different conversation.
Yeah, I'm overweight to the field on him, and not really anything you said that I'm going to disagree with. I pretty much echo a lot of the same sentiments. So Hamidou Diallo is somebody who I don't have the utmost confidence in his playing time, but is somebody who I think is going a little bit underrepresented by the field on both DraftKings and FanDuel today. Some more questions coming into our Discord channel. This one from Sniffs1234. What rules are you putting in for Miami and Phoenix with so much value? Nothing too specific. I just have my fantasy cruncher capped at no more than 4 players per team. Nothing else too specific I'm doing. Is there anything you're doing to try to limit players that are either from being in the same lineups or a maximum amount of players per team, Eric?
No, part of me thought about it where you're looking at the 2 centers from Phoenix. I think that would be the most glaring example on a slate like this. Obviously on FanDuel, you're only playing one of them, so you don't have to think about it. On DraftKings, I think just because it's 3K and 3,200, awesome. I'm probably just going to end up playing whoever starts a little bit more than I expected. I'm going to get to more Landale regardless, just because I think he has been ahead in the rotation. I think if he goes out and plays well, they're just going to give him more minutes than Biyombo. I think that's pretty clear cut. He's the better fantasy producer. I feel pretty good about Landale being somebody I want more of, but if they showed up in the same lineups, actually, this is probably the right way to say it. If Orlando Robinson fails early on, I'm more likely to play both of them in lineups. If Orlando Robinson smashes, I'm only probably going to want to make sure that I have one, because what are the chances that both of them beat an Orlando Robinson 30-point score? Probably pretty unlikely. So I think that's probably the sharper way of looking at it. I'm going to react to how Robinson plays.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of Orlando Robinson, assuming he starts, which I think he does,
same.
I find it nearly impossible to get away from him. He's in, even upping the randomness I had in Fantasy Cruncher, I set more randomness on him than any other player just to see how it would change up. He still pops up in nearly everything I build. And I don't really find, unless he doesn't start, I think I'm just going to ride with the chalk on this one. Is there anything different that you're going to be doing with Orlando Robinson?
I mean, I'm not going to have 100% of him because there are pieces like Saric that I think are going to pull away from it. But that being said, I have 78% of him on my last run. I bet I get at least that. That seems to be making sense. So not like a 100% type play, but God, he just projects so well. Again, for me, there's Saric, there's Landale, there's a number of these super 3K pieces. If you get both Craig and Shamet out, there are really no rules. You could get to Ish Wainwright. You could get to Josh Okogie down there at 3,200 3K. That's like 4 players on one basketball team that are all near the min. So like, does Robinson still project the best out of all of them for me? Yes, he does. But Saric isn't that far behind. I have him about a fantasy point and a half behind him. Like, you give me 4 pieces of Phoenix to rotate into lineups. I think that at least has to be warranted to not like lock button Robinson early for me.
And now we should also have a conversation about Orlando Robinson for FanDuel, because he's a way different looking play on FanDuel compared to DraftKings. I don't want anybody to get confused by this. He's not a lock and load play over on FanDuel. In fact, at $5,700 on FanDuel, I get to him around 10% of the lineups that I built. He's way different looking, 5,700 on FanDuel. I know we've seen upside from him with other players, particularly Bam Adebayo out for the Heat, but he's just a guy on FanDuel at 5,700. Do you see him any different?
No, and I mean, part of that is I'm getting to Embiid on FanDuel. I'm playing both sites today. I'm getting to a lot of Embiid. I'm playing a lot of power forwards, whether it's Pascal Siakam, Evan Mobley, projecting really well for me over there. Those are kind of pieces that are showing up in the center spots for me. Center isn't as valuable outside of Landale, who is going to be very, very popular over there. There's not somebody that's pulling some egregious amount of ownership right now. Isaiah Stewart has power forward eligibility, so I think that's going to influx a little bit of his ownership as well. But for the most part, I find him to just be a dude there. He's showing up right around 5% for me. Let me take a look. Yeah, 5% of him in my last run. I can't imagine he's somebody that you want to be prioritizing at that kind of a number. Definitely more DraftKings specific.
And by the way, just because I've seen people ask, "Hey, where are the starting lineups?" They don't exist yet. We've gotten 0 starting lineups on the games for today. Not a single. I mean, obviously, teams that are just running their normal lineups. Like we know who's going to be starting for the Toronto Raptors because they have everybody healthy. But yeah, for the teams we actually care about the starting lineups of, we don't know who's starting for the Detroit Pistons. We don't know who's starting for the Miami Heat. So we should be getting the Pistons starting lineup, I assume, the next 10, 15 minutes or so. And the Heat starting lineup, good chance we don't get that until after lock. But the good news is Eric and I are going to be sticking around 30 minutes post lock to sweat the slate and then also just talk about whatever it is that comes out in terms of late breaking news, lineups, all of that. So like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and stick around for that 30-minute time slot. By the way, Joel Embiid officially will play. PJ Tucker will also play. They're both going to be in the starting lineup. We got the Sixers full starters: Harden, Maxey, Harris, Tucker, and Embiid. Nothing surprising there. Next question we have is from Sam Cassell Dance. How important do you think it is to play one of the value centers in single entry contests on DraftKings? It's really hard to get away from them today. I would say very important, not because of the position or anything, just because they're some of the best plays on the slate.
Well, it's kind of a perfect storm too, because if you had to pay up for one player on this slate, Luka is the guy you're paying up for. He's a point guard. So you're playing him at a guard spot. By default, him at 12-6, like there are centers that I like. I do like getting to Zubats as a tournament play. I like getting to Nurkic at 6,100 as a tournament play on DraftKings. I like getting to Siakam at 10-1 on DraftKings going up against a Mason Plumlee-led front court there in Charlotte. But I just find it impossible to get away from jamming Luka, jamming a lot of cheapness. Like, and it seems as though outside of Dwayne Washington, who has shooting guard eligibility, everybody else is going to be forward and center eligible, and those are just the spots that you end up punting by default. So playing Luka at a guard spot, I have almost 100% of him on both sites, and then I'm just punting at other places, and it just happens to be center where the best values are.
Super chat from Ade Balogun. He wants to know, what the hell is Dario at a 40% boom on FanDuel, and how much would you play? So I do think Dario Saric is a really good tournament option today, because once again, look at the injury report for the Phoenix Suns. We talked about it before. There's no Chris Paul. There's no Devin Booker. There's no DeAndre Ayton. There's no Cam Johnson. There's no Cam Payne. And Sarge started last game. Not only did he start, he played a pretty significant amount of minutes. In addition, Torrey Craig might not play today. He's questionable. If he's going to sit, I mean, there's opportunity for Sarge to start and play really big minutes. Now, the concern here, Dario Saric, long injury history. This is another game that I think is very, very live to be a blowout. We got 26 minutes out of Dario Saric last night. If there's no Torrey Craig and this game is competitive, we're probably looking at north of 30 minutes from Dario Saric. That is why he projects so well. But once again, there are risks here just in terms of weird scenario for the Suns. We don't know exactly what the rotation is going to be. We don't know if this game is going to be a blowout. Steph Curry back on the Warriors, clearly a boost for them. But Dario Saric in large field tournaments, how are you going to approach him?
Mark Perry saying Sarge trash as hell. It doesn't matter if you're trash if you play 30 minutes and you're a guy who projects 0.8 fantasy points per minute at 3,300 on DraftKings with power forward eligibility. I think if Sarge was,
he did ask about FanDuel, by the way, in the question.
Oh, it doesn't matter. Yeah, either site on FanDuel as well. He's just a fantastic play. Again, the 40% bust. What is there? 40% boom percentage is what he's sitting at there. 37.94%, 3,800. Again, power forward, such a big discrepancy there. 3,800 for him there. There's a lot of good power forwards, but not many of them that could play 30 minutes. And as you said, I think my biggest question, if we hadn't seen that game 2 days ago, is what could those minutes be? Because his previous high was 21 minutes. Him getting to 26 minutes is a big deal. And I'm not going to project him for like 30 by any means. I've got him in for 27 right now. We've got him at exactly 27 over at Stokastic as well. So that's awfully nice to see. that's going to have him grade out pretty well because you expect with no Booker Paul, he's going to be more around a 0.9, 0.95 fantasy point per minute guy for FanDuel purposes. He's really not pulling a crazy amount of ownership either. 15%. That's pretty low owned on a slate where other pieces of value are just crazy popular. So I think it's very much warranted.
Yeah. And by the way, also, this is not a popular player that we're talking about today.
Exactly.
Dario Saric, let me refresh the ownership to see if anything has changed. Actually, Jordan, if you wouldn't mind, can you put the ownership up on the screen right now? Let's just show people the most popular players right now as far as FanDuel and DraftKings are concerned. And then we'll also scroll down and look at Saric on both sites. And also when it comes to Saric, we're also considering him as a contrarian value option. He's projected for 10% ownership on DraftKings. On FanDuel, he's projected for 15% ownership on a smallish slate. Like, he's not a bad pivot off of a lot of the other really popular players. But starting with DraftKings, these are the most popular players we have on the slate. Jimmy Butler, 55% ownership. Dwayne Washington, 51. Orlando Robinson, 50. Gabe Vincent, right around 40. Max Strus, 37. Hamidou Diallo's up to 28 now. So we just got a fresh ownership run. Is that going to change your view of him at all?
No, thanks. I have to address one thing in the chat. Geriatric, but that means 60% bust. No, it does not. So the boom bust tool, when you're looking at it, when they talk about a boom percentage, it's 5x plus 10 fantasy points. A bust is failing to achieve 5x. So you're basically, there's a wide range of outcomes in the middle that exists. And so it's not just 40% to boom, 60% to bust. It's drastically lower to bust in this kind of a spot. Saric has a bust percentage, not 5xing at 3,800. It's like 8% of the time. And most of that would be injuries because if he plays enough minutes, I mean, he's the most positively leveraged player to get to on FanDuel right now in the boom bust tool. So I know that that's kind of a widely held belief. I've had a couple of people over the course of the last couple months and years that have brought that up where it's like, oh, 40% to 60%. It does not work out that way. He has a 40% chance to boom, an 8% chance to bust with a lot of stuff in the middle.
Yeah, so there's a middle ground, right? Yep. And not everything, and I understand why people would think that way because everything, especially in today's day, everything is great or everything sucks, and there's no middle ground. But there is. Sometimes guys are just decent, right? If you played Jimmy Butler today at 9,000 on FanDuel, 4,500 on DraftKings, he goes out and scores 47, 48 fantasy points. It's pretty decent, right? So that's kind of the middle ground between the boom and the bust score where somebody could be just kind of okay. And that's kind of what we're looking at.
It's like me on shows. It's just kind of okay. It's not Lofty. It's not Alex Baker. It's just sort of okay. And I'm all right with that.
It's something better in my book. It's something magical.
Thank you, baby.
The next super chat that we have here is, I'm pretty sure I saw another. Here it is. Yeah, Jake Lewis. Who's my center for the $180 ticket? 500 lineup content.
Isaiah Stewart ruled out.
Okay, well, this is going to change everything.
Wow. That is a bombshell.
All right. By the way, Jake Lewis wanted to know, though, just so we could. And Nerlens Noel starting.
Holy shit. Hold up. All right. See if you can get in some props. Prize Picks has been very, very slow in that regard. So check that out. Also, is that the first time I've ever seen a breaking news alert like that? I am just jamming fantasy score for everybody not named Isaiah Stewart right now. So just want to throw that out there. Very much recommend you doing the same. Jimmy Butler's at 47.5 fantasy score. Put that with it right now. All right. Jaden Ivey got that. All right. I'm going to have a ton of exposure to this now.
Yeah. So this was definitely not expected. Just starting to say like, hey, we have a slate where not a whole lot of news. So starting lineup for the Pistons. But this starting lineup is absolute dog shit, by the way. Oh, is this terrible?
If you could bet 14 right now, go bet 14. Nerlens Noel and Kevin Knox in a starting lineup is just.
I don't think Knox is terrible. Noel's whatever. I think Noel's fairly solid. He's just been hurt all year.
Yeah, hurt all year and like the worst fantasy producing center of all time.
All right, so we've got the starting lineup just to read it off to everybody. Hayes, Ivy, Bay. Nothing crazy there. This is where shit hits the fan. Kevin Knox, Nerlens Noel in the front court. So we're going to talk about that in a second. I just do want to finish up. Jake Lewis wants to know who he should play at center today on DraftKings for a single entry contest where he has a $180 ticket and chance to win a $2,500 ticket to the Mega Millionaire contest tomorrow. As things stand right now, Orlando Robinson.
Yes.
All
Same.
right. So let's talk about the nonsense that is the Detroit
my.
Pistons. Let's talk about this, because now that we have this starting lineup for the Pistons, other guys in, other guys out, other than the fact that we're obviously not playing Isaiah Stewart, who was a perfectly fine play before, what do you really like getting to from the Pistons? Now, we also don't have Diallo starting, who we were talking about before.
Yeah, just the number of guys that I have to use in the on-off court tool right now, it's just egregious. But Isaiah Stewart's a guy who that's some actual usage to replace. Again, no Cade Cunningham. He's been around 29.5% all year. No Bojan Bogdanovic, 26.3% under all situations. Then you go into Isaiah Stewart is at 17.8%, but then that's a lot of rebounds, a lot of other things up for grabs. And that usage had been trending up here of late. I am just looking at these guards. I mean, Killian Hayes, Jaden Ivey. I mean, this is just absurd. And now Nerlens Noel, just another center. On FanDuel, Nerlens Noel is 3,700. So, like, how much do people play him the next 20 minutes having this news just come out? I'm going to get to him. Like, it's just going to happen. And Kevin Knox, just another piece that is at flat min on FanDuel, 3,500 over on DraftKings. I never thought that I would be having to play some Kevin Knox, but he's a flat 3K. I think Hamidou Diallo is still going to be somebody that people click on too much. So now Kevin Knox becomes your obvious pivot. I just played the seesaw game with Hamidou Diallo, but like, this is pretty clear cut. 2 flat 3K players that are starting that we weren't anticipating. That's a drastic change.
Yeah. And by the way, because somebody had asked, can we put the FanDuel ownership percentages on screen? We talk about DraftKings, not FanDuel. Everything we were talking about before in terms of ownership kind of goes out the window. Everything's different now. So we'll be getting an ownership run in a little bit. And when we do get that updated for this Pistons news, which I assume will be in the next, 5-6 minutes or so, we'll go back to that and we'll talk about the ownership again and how it's changed. But at least for right now, it's really hard to say what the ownership is going to be. But quick question we did get from Jaw1224. Do you prefer Noel or Knox today on DraftKings? Oh boy. Probably just based on position, it's probably going to be Knox whenever we run lineups.
Let's do this. So, I mean, I'm trying to get out of these FanDuel contests because I can't do 2 sites with this today. I can't deal with it. And I think because they're both flat 3K, I'm just going to focus on DK. Just easier for me to withdraw here in the next 2 minutes. I'm glad that news came out there. I'm going to keep 25 lineups over there on FanDuel and just focus on this DK portfolio. But Kevin Knox is not a good fantasy producer, but again, he's going to be better just in terms of like these minutes. It's really hard to know because Kevin Knox could close the game in a blowout too. That kind of would have been the major time that you would utilize him and think that he would be viable anyway. Now he's starting and you still probably get blowout run. Nerlens Noel, 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy, a lot better than you saw when he was in Knicks. So I guess that was a little bit of a personal bias thrown into the mix there. But I mean, my God, this is going to be wild how much I get to these guys.
Yeah, I'm just starting to update some stuff now. I'll hit on some super chats that are coming in as well. My filler arc, Laurie and Wood or Franz and SGA. I have a feeling I'm not going to get too much of any of those guys now after I'm updating lineups. So we have so much space to pay up for the top guys now. Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic. I don't know that some of the like secondary tier stars or players I'm going to get very much of. The answer for me would be Laurie and Wood. But once again, I don't think any of those 4 guys are priorities right now.
Not at all. Again, we just added more power forward center depth. Like, that is not the place that I'm going to be spending up with my money. I'm getting Luka 100%. Like, there's just no way around playing Luka 100% if you're playing DFS every single day. If you're just worried about that portfolio and you can't be invested in one player that much over the course of a day, or you're playing heavier, or you're playing one lineup, something that would get you away from doing that, I get it. But like, bankroll management, I'm just playing Luka 100% because I'm willing to take a dive if he puts up 40. And I'm okay with it. Like, he's just a lock button play because of the position he's at. These other guys are at the same position of these guys that you just mentioned that you want to get to. Don't do that.
Oh boy. All right. So Kevin Knox. There's nothing worse than when you feel like you have to get to Kevin Knox on a slate, but he's going to be in lineups.
Honestly, though, he's not in as many lineups as I was anticipating him getting into, which makes me wonder if other people are doing the same thing, and maybe I should get to more.
Updating my lineup, see what comes in. I'm getting to more Nerlens Noel than I thought I was going to.
That is who is showing up a lot for me. I ended up getting 28% of him.
Next super chat we have is from Nico Pico, and he's got a question for us today, though, which you love to see. Top 4 point guards for today. So I'm rerunning my lineups for... Let's see. He didn't specify whether it's FanDuel or DraftKings. Do you have a preference whether you want to answer this question for FanDuel or for DraftKings?
I'm now only playing DraftKings. I got out of all my FanDuel.
So I think for FanDuel, I'll just say the players that I think are the best point guard options over on FanDuel for today. Luka clearly is one, without a doubt. Luka. And by the way, Luka was kind of underowned, I thought, before on FanDuel, but Luka, Gabe Vincent, Donovan Mitchell, and let's see if I have a more contrarian one in here as well that I like. Because I know those guys are all really popular. They're also the ones that I just got to the most often. But I kind of think it's the right answer. Victor Oladipo is the other one. For DraftKings, who would you consider the 4 top point guard plays?
Top 4, I mean, Luka by an absolute metric mile that I would be getting to over everybody else. Let me see what I ended up with for everybody else. Gabe Vincent, assuming he starts, Dwayne Washington, and Jaden Ivey. Those are my 3 highest. Or my 4 highest.
The next super chat we have is from... Scrolling. We got a lot of questions and comments that came in when that dumb Detroit Pistons starting lineup came out. So I had to scroll a little bit here. Jorge Giacomi says, does this mean 100% Luka or Embiid today? Not 100% for me, but I have a lot of Luka. Embiid actually, this lowered my ownership to Embiid.
Yeah, because now you're just seeing him go out and smash and play 3 quarters, and then you're done.
Not that. I just have other centers to play now.
Yeah, it's just another center that's pulling it away. I have to play 14 lineups on FanDuel. Okay, cool. They didn't get completely out. Whatever. Yeah, I'm just looking at DK right now. I don't have like any Embiid. I should probably get to a little bit more Embiid in the next however many minutes. Yeah, I had 0.
I'm fine with the fact that I don't have a ton of Embiid just because of the fact that I like getting to Orlando Robinson. I like getting to Nerlens Noel. And by the way, talking DraftKings specific when we're talking about Orlando Robinson being one of the top plays. But Nerlens Noel, I think, makes a whole lot of sense on both sites. Let me see for FanDuel purposes. Does Noel have power forward eligibility on? Yeah, only center eligibility for Noel on FanDuel. I mean, Embiid is still a strong option, but his ownership for your personal portfolio, I think, should go down based on this news, just because you should want to play Noel now, and he's center only. Embiid is center only. It takes a spot away from Embiid. Clearly, it's a great spot for him, but I want to play Nerlens Noel as a value option.
Yeah, I want to play Nerlens. This is just ridiculous.
The next question. We just got an ownership update, so I'm going to refresh that, and then let me check to make sure that no other.
You whispered that so quietly.
Yeah,
I like.
Yeah, like it was a secret that we got super chats. I think we answered all these, Jordan. Yeah, we answered all these. We're good. Thank you, though. I appreciate you very much, Jordan Klein.
Thank you, Jordan Klein.
Wonderful human being.
Thank you,
Eric
Jordan
will
Klein.
reward you handsomely tonight in bed. As for the other, sorry, that's just how it works when you produce as well.
Just
I am about to upload some lineups.
I'm very surprised at the Luka ownership we have right now. This is really, really weird to me.
So ownership right now, we're going to go over the top players on DraftKings, top players on FanDuel. Top 5 on DK, Jimmy Butler, Orlando Robinson, Dwayne Washington, Gabe Vincent, and Max Strus. Top 5 for FanDuel, Jimmy Butler, Dwayne Washington, Mikal Bridges, Gabe Vincent and Kawhi Leonard. I'm with you. I think that given the amount of value we have and the fact that so much of the value is in the front court, I know that Luke is expensive, but we know the ceiling is there. It's not that hard to get to him. So
the floor could work out for you. Like a 55 or 60 fantasy point outing, like the floor could still work.
Yeah, if the value guys come through.
Yeah. It's really weird to me.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think he is definitely being a little bit underrepresented. I want to do 100%. One more run.
What could go wrong?
By the way, I am what's funny is before I was trying to undercut the field on Dwayne Washington, but now I don't really like Hamidou Diallo all that much.
Nope,
so
me either.
Now, one thing that changed here, I got some more Dwayne Washington as I got to less of Dwayne Washington. I'm getting to a lot of Nerlens Noel, mentioned that before. We have a question in Discord from the process. I think this is a good one. Robinson or Noel for DK small tournaments? I still prefer Orlando Robinson. I'm getting more exposure to him.
Same. Somebody just said the floor could work out for you. Killed me. Well, I'm not saying 40. I said I'm willing to lose today, and if that ends up working out, but he's going to be 25%. That's just kind of wrong. What was the other thing? Oh, Luka goes for 60. You're ripping an L. No, you're not. If you go for 60 from Luka, if you give me 60 from Luka right now, I'd lock it in every single lineup because I'm going to be able to pay up at other spots for other studs still. It's not like I'm not going to be able to get to Jimmy Butler or Shea or Embiid or whomever else I want. I'm just going to be punting just like everybody else is everywhere else. It's a stars and scrubs slate. Welcome.
All right. Got to upload these lineups now. Some more questions that we got in our Discord channel. Big Dream. Does this make all of Philly look gross? Ish. Like is there anybody from Philly that you're really highly prioritizing now?
No, not a single person. James Harden's the guy I have the most of, and I have 8% of him on DK in my last run. Yeah. Embiid, we have a 22%. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. This can't be right. 22% for Embiid, 25% for Doncic. It's kind of wild to me, and I get it. Like, I think Embiid, me having 0 was wrong. But like for them to be 3% apart when you have so many centers you want to get to, and like I get it, we have guards that are decent, but like nobody that's close to Luka Doncic. Like I'm just happy locking him in today.
Yeah, I much prefer Luka to Embiid as a pay up. And it's not even because I'm going to guarantee that Luka is going to score more fantasy points than Embiid or anything, just based on the positions they play.
Correct.
And who the other guys are available at those positions.
Correct.
We're on the same page with that one. Let's bang out some more questions that we got in Discord, and that should bring us into lock. And then after lock, we're going to be getting some starting line. I assume the Heat starting lineup is going to come sometime after lock. So you guys are going to want to stick around for that 30 minutes. And then also, Eric and I are going to look at BetPro, the new tool we have over at Stokastic. We're going to find you some bets to place, hoping some of you guys signed up at BetMGM before. But if you guys are already there, you didn't sign up, we're going to try to find bets for you anyway that we really like for tonight's slate. But question here. The Maharashi wants to know, FanDuel put the phantom check mark on Stewart. Update, they took it down. So Eric, what do you think about FanDuel giving our guy Isaiah Stewart the green check mark?
No comment.
Smart. Next question is from Einsteinium. Do you just play Jimmy Butler in large field GPPs on FanDuel? Yes.
Yes.
Same on DraftKings. Jimmy Butler's a great pay-up option.
Sure is.
Scripps wants to know, would you play 4 Heat or Suns in a lineup for FanDuel? Yes. I think if you have a lineup or two that has 4 Heat, 4 Suns players, it's some of the best plays on the slate. I'm fine with that. I assume you are as well.
Correct.
The next question is from Big Dream. Should I be wondering if OKC, which isn't bad defensively, just smothers Jimmy and makes life miserable for him, aka fade Jimmy? I think that those kinds of individual matchups and stuff could be a little bit overthought, right? Like, even if Butler isn't super efficient or anything like that, it's hard to imagine he's not going to be massively involved in the Heat's game plan. They have so many guys out for the team. Now, does that mean that you have to play 100% of them? No, but I would not fade Jimmy Butler.
I would not fade Jimmy Butler in any way, shape, or form today. And Greg, noted Jimmy Butler fighter, is playing him. That should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, and we just got the Raptors starting lineup. Nothing crazy there. Van Vliet, Trent, Anunoby, Barnes, and Siakam. And I mean, Jimmy Butler is a great player when he's on the court. He just only plays every other day.
That's
today he's playing. Everybody else is sitting.
What are you doing? How much Kevin Knox did you end up with? I ended up with 6%, and I'm kind of okay with it. I'm way lower on him than I expected to be.
I have 12%.
Okay, good.
I ended up getting
It's the only game that's locking, so it's the only thing I'm worried about right now.
No, totally reasonable. And let's see. I'm uploading my lineups right now, and then I could
let's do that.
In like 30 seconds, I could say who it is that I also ended up prioritizing.
I can do a lot of things in 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah, we could. The stuff we've done before as well. But
Lucky.
the Pistons, Noel is by far the priority.
Yeah, Noel and then Jaden Ivey. I have a lot of Jaden Ivey.
I'm going to name my CSV Nerlens Noel because that'll make
the
me know
first Nerlens Noel.
The what?
Nothing.
What
You're
is
Jewish.
reference?
You don't know. It's fine. It's a song.
I don't believe you.
It is. I didn't just make it up.
The next super chat we just got in is from the consigliere. Harden, Curry, or Siakam in the utility. Of those options, Harden. But honestly, none of them. But you've got 3 minutes.
No big. Best of luck to you.
What'd you say?
I said no big. Best of luck to you getting your lineups in.
Yeah, Harden's the answer. If you're right in a pinch, you just have to pick one of them. Curry's going to be on minutes restriction today, and Siakam is gotten to be more expensive. I have Harden projected better.
We haven't gotten a Miami starting lineup, right?
No, we have no. Yeah. The only starting lineup that we have from the only one early game. So we've got the starting lineup for the Sixers and the Pistons. That game starts in 3 minutes. It would really suck if we didn't have that lineup yet.
It would.
And then we have the Charlotte starting lineup, the Toronto starting lineup, but that's not anything we need.
What's my Nurkic ownership looking like on DK? I have no idea because I just changed a lot of stuff very, very quickly. And I think with just the one game, I'm just making sure that I get the right ownerships in on that one game, and then I will reshuffle afterwards. I have 6% of him now. I had 25% of him before, so obviously some of that went to Nerlens, and I will fix it. But yeah, welcome to today's slate. Wild stuff is going to happen.
My most rostered players from the first slate of the game in order. It went Nerlens, Nerlens Noel 1, and then I have Kevin Knox and Joel Embiid basically the same. And then Killian Hayes, Sadiq Bey, James Harden, Jaden Ivey, Hamidou Diallo for me. By the clear priority for me personally was Nerlens Noel. Eric also said that he had Jaden Ivey in that mix. And
yeah, Jaden Ivey ended up my highest owned player from the entire game, which is kind of wild. 25.6% Jaden Ivey, 18% Killian Hayes, 15% Nerlens Noel, 15% Sadiq Bey, which I did not expect, 12% Hamidou Diallo. I expect to be way under on that. Joel Embiid, 11%, James Harden, 8%. Kevin Knox, 8%. Alec Burks, 6%.
We have to help our guy Blinky right here. There's 90 seconds to go into lock. He just said that he left $6,100 on salary and table on FanDuel. He's got $6,100 left on FanDuel. One spot. I misread. I thought he said that he was leaving that much salary on the table. He needs to fill out his, I assume, the shooting guard
today, Junior.
Well, he didn't tell me what position. He just said I have 6,100 left.
That's not helpful.
He says he could play Hart or Simon. So I assume that must mean shooting guard because that's where they overlap. $6,100 on FanDuel. Who do I have projected the highest? Trying to get this to him as quickly as possible. Victor Oladipo for me.
Yeah, it would be. And I hope he starts. He's kind of the one piece that I would get to, I think, regardless of him starting or not. Whereas Haywood Highsmith, I wouldn't. But I think he's in play regardless of how that turns out. 5,300 dual eligibility, nobody there. Sounds like fun.
Yeah. So I'm sorry I misunderstood your question at first, Blinky, but Victor Oladipo is my answer there. And we should be getting that starting lineup before too long. So guys, if you haven't done yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Please don't leave. Eric and I, we really do. All our self-confidence, all our self-belief comes from you guys sticking around, checking us out, our show, liking the video, subscribing to the YouTube channel, signing up at BetMGM that you could do by clicking on the link below. 2 free months of Stokastic plus Platinum when you sign up. But here we are. We are at lock. And is there anything that we didn't get to touch on that you want to add there? Because I know it kind of became a crazy scramble to make sure we had everything fixed for Detroit and for Philly.
No, I mean, Prize Pick still has 26.5 fantasy score attached for Jaden Ivey. I think that's something that if you're in California like me, you should be betting right now. You should be playing a lot of it. We've got him at Stokastic. Again, they basically use FanDuel scoring for it. That doesn't lock for another 10 minutes here. I just keep putting him into, there we go.
We got it. The Heat starting lineup. Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, Orlando Robinson.
Hey, Highwood. Highwood. I just put the two words together. Highwood. Haywood.
Something Eric says every morning when I wake up. Says it to me every. Oh,
what else? Hate the Thunder.
Thunder starting lineup. SGA, Lou Dort, Josh Giddey, Jalen Williams, and then we got Amar Rui in the starting lineup. Udonis Haslem is available to play. I mean, does this even the Heat lineup is infinitely more important to us.
But Yuri, I didn't even have him projected. I had 0 minutes for him.
It's also not even going to change anything for me as far as the Thunder go.
I know. I just don't want to do it. Like, I just got done doing all of this Detroit stuff, and now I don't want to. I'm just not even going to change it. I'm just not going to play anybody there. But I mean, I thought Kenrich Williams at 3,900 was still a dude, and now he's not even starting. So there's that.
Yeah, I just overall, I mean, Omar Rui though is. Let's look at his last start. He's min price on DraftKings. Am I going to actually have to put him in some lineups?
It's the problem. I said it's just he's got power forward eligibility on DraftKings. Like, what in the F?
He only played 16 minutes in his last start. I'm cool with.
Okay, good. Then I'm not going to do anything with it.
I don't even. So to the point made before, I could give him those minutes. I'm not even going to bother. It's not going to change anything for me. Okay, I'm just going to leave everything as is. Right.
Good. Let's be lazy together.
But it's not even being lazy. It just doesn't matter. Right. If I give him 16 minutes or I give him 14 minutes, he's showing up in none of my lineups.
Okay. We have a different process then. Whatever.
Let's talk about the Miami Heat because their starting lineup gave Vincent, Max Strus, Jimmy Butler, Haywood Highsmith, Orlando Robinson. I mean, I feel pretty good about this. This is the lineup I was expecting them to play. I wasn't positive Orlando Robinson was going to start because we've seen them do weird things with the center position. But given the fact that he's starting, I think he's pretty clearly the best value play on the slate as far as DraftKings goes. Haywood Highsmith, he's been starting as of late, so I don't really think too much changes for him, at least relative to how I had him projected before. But this Heat starting lineup, what reactions do you have to it? And is this going to change anything for you?
Yeah, I'm curious what I'm going to do with Oladipo's minutes here. I just talked about how, if he's coming off the bench, he's the one piece I feel decent about. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, but it would have been nice to see him start because I had him around 32 minutes. And I think I'm going to put him at 30 now. And that's going to change his projection. I'm going to get to less than what did I have, 25%? Probably going to get trimmed in half, probably. So it definitely still matters.
Well, I wasn't expecting him to start, though.
I wasn't either, but like, I gave him a couple extra minutes in case, and I took a couple away from Gabe Vincent. And then Haywood Highsmith, I just kind of was indifferent about. I didn't know what I was going to do, and now he feels pretty secure. He's a terrible fantasy producer, and I think that you had just even said that before. He's had a couple of starts here, but everybody's out, and it just changes the complexion of what it could be. Like if he plays 32, 33 minutes, still another piece you can get to on this slate. And, I've made it pretty clear my stance on what I'm doing with Luka Doncic. Like I'm going to just get to a little bit more Haywood Highsmith.
I have Highsmith. So this isn't going to change any of my Heat's projections. I had 14% of Haywood Highsmith at close to min price on DraftKings. That is not going to change for me because there's not I wouldn't change his minutes for this. I thought he was going to start before. He's starting.
Yeah, this is what I expected. Chris M. Wow, Embiid 9% owned at the DK 100K. Yeah, that's exactly. Like, it was just something that was very confusing how we were getting him so high. At 10%, it's hard not to like somebody with the raw points potential of Joel Embiid. The problem is he's at the worst position you could possibly be at to spend up for somebody, so I think it's probably warranted.
I wonder, what did Noel end up coming in? Let me open up the $15 on DK.
Somebody just asked if somebody's a better play, Highsmith or Diallo. Well, can't really make that decision now.
So here is... Oh, sorry. What was the question?
Where did they just have that? Somebody asked about the difference between Diallo and
In Discord?
Is Knox still a better play than Highsmith? Well, one's locked and one isn't. So if you've played Knox, you're playing Knox, and if you haven't, then you're going to play Highsmith. There you go.
So, by the way, the player now that is most important for me on the slate is going to be Nerlens Noel's 13% on the $15 on DraftKings.
Oh my God. I wish I played more.
Nobody swapped to Nerlens Noel.
I mean, I got to, how much did I even get to? I can't remember what I said. I've just,
Knox is 11% owned, so not too much different.
Yeah, at center, I'm still Orlando Robinson by far, then Landale, then Nerlens. 15.4% Nerlens. I wish I had gotten more.
Yeah, he's in about half my lineups.
That's very smart, and you're a better person than me. But here's the thing. I draw better in Rainmakers than you do.
Yeah, Eric, by the way, destroyed packs. Absolutely destroyed packs. So not that anybody's going to care about this, but this was big news around my house with my brother and I, because I buy packs. I flip a lot of them in the Rainmaker stuff. Eric decides to open some UFC Rainmakers and just got all of the nut pulls. Like, if anybody opened packs today for UFC Rainmakers, guaranteed didn't run better than Eric, who got legendary Umar Nurmagomedov, got a legendary. I'm trying to remember who the other guy.
I'll just pull it up because it's pretty incredible. I bought 4 packs. I got 4 packs in the drop, and my second one I got a legendary, and I was like, shit, I should probably buy 4 more packs. And then I got 2 elite cards in those next 4, so I had like 200 or something. I was like, I'll pull just to see if I get another elite, and it was like $300 or $400 in. I was like, oh, this is stupid. And I got that last elite to kind of round out what could have been like a setup to be able to buy one for a legendary, kind of feel out what everything was going to cost. And I was like, I'll get one more pack. And in that last one, I got an elite and a legendary in the same pack. And one of them was like the nuts. So that was fun. Yeah. Basharat is the guy that I got along with Nurmagomedov. Rebecca.
Aggressive Goose saying, how much is DK paying us to do this right now? Literally nothing. This is just
$0.
What we did. This is just what we did with our afternoons. Like,
this
is just what we did with our afternoons. We're not shilling anything. We're not telling you guys to go do something. We're just saying Eric got really lucky today. And my brother and I were really, when you sent me the screenshot of your packs, like my brother and I were waiting to see who else was in that final pack.
It was fun. It was a fun kind of slow reveal. It was kind of a fun way to do it. You send the screenshot of each of the cards as you're opening them, going back and forth. I was like, can't really do it live, but it was pretty cool. It was pretty fun.
We have no more questions in Discord. If anybody has questions about how to handle the Miami Heat situation or anything else you have questions on regarding the rest of the slate, hit me up in Discord, and we could certainly hit on and answer some of those questions that you guys may have. So how much Haywood Highsmith are you playing? Because like I said, I've got him low teens. I'm not that much different than Field relative to where we have him projected. We have him projected 14% over on FanDuel. DraftKings, we have him projected for 12%. That's right around the same mark I am. Are you going to be well over the Field on that, or about? You can't be too much under a 12% owned guy, but about around the Field or over on Haywood Highsmith?
I'm going to be a little bit over right now. I have 15.9% of my last run. I have 195 lineups on DK today. Far more over there. I ended up with 14 lineups. They wouldn't let me get rid of everything on FanDuel today, so that's whatever. But the DK lineups look as though, he's going to be just over 11% for me. Maybe I should just reconsider, because there's a lot that you can do based on how this Detroit game starts off. Like, this first quarter rotation is going to matter a lot of what I do, because I'll just jam a lot of Dwayne Washington. Like, if Nerlens Noel and Kevin Knox get off to good starts, we're both over the Field. Not much for me for Noel, not as much as I should have been. You're way over. We'll be able to react pretty closely to what we should do. Like, I think Haywood Highsmith is a guy that in 20 minutes, I might get to more of than I probably should, just because I think he's going to be the under-owned piece out of everybody there. Not as under-owned as what I think Landry Shamet has a potential to be. And that's the guy that I want to get to the most of in that late night window. If we're just talking about late swap, Torrey Craig is okay, but doesn't project out nearly as well. Terrence Mann, kind of the safety valve in that entire window. But for the most part, like Haywood Highsmith, I understand he's a bad fantasy producer, but there's something about these minutes that could just be outrageous. So I have to play more than 11%.
I want to see what is the. Oh, here we go. All right. What would you guess is the ownership on Isaiah Stewart tonight?
8%.
He is 5% on DraftKings, and then somebody in chat had posted Isaiah Stewart is. I think somebody said that he's 7% on FanDuel.
It's incredible.
So there we go. The folks on DraftKings a little bit sharper than they were on FanDuel, but I mean 5% or 7%. So kind of playing like half rake today. Half rake, baby. The Isaiah Stewart players definitely helped us with that. The next question that we have here, got a super chat from Enzo Boza. He wants to know, is Butler, Robinson, Vincent, and Oladipo too much for DK? I probably have lineups with all four of them. I don't think it's ideal, but I don't think it's the end of the world either. Let me see how many lineups I have that have those four. So he had said Butler, Robinson, Vincent, and Oladipo. So here's I do have a few lineups that have all four of them. I don't have any lineups that have more than 4 Heat players though. So here's why I think it's okay. Gabe Vincent, Orlando Robinson, extremely cheap on DraftKings. Extremely cheap. No issues with them being in the same lineup. Jimmy Butler is going to be eating up a ton of usage. Victor Oladipo is going to have a lot of usage too, but he's also coming off the bench. So I think he's going to be staggered enough with Jimmy Butler, and he's at a price point where it's acceptable. I think it's fine having Vincent, Oladipo, Butler, and Robinson in the same lineup. Do you feel differently?
No, but what a start. Nerlens Noel block, Jaden Ivey 3-ball. I mean, this is just wild. Let me get back to this. I'm still updating everything over here for Miami. It's going very, very slow for me. I'm trying to make sure that there's nothing that I missed. Once again, this is a great time to be here for the extra half hour. Somebody said go an hour over. This is not the day you'd want us to go an hour over because there's not another game until 9 p.m. Eastern time. You've got 2 games locking here right now. This Miami situation, I have no problem if you want to get to all four of those guys here right now. But like Jimmy Butler is somebody that I project even just slightly better now. That it's going to be Haywood Highsmith on the floor here instead of Oladipo. I think that that's one small change. I'm getting to even more Jimmy Butler than what I was before. I was right around the field. Now I'm nearly 60%. So that's something that's changed for me. But yeah, getting to Oladipo, Butler, Strus, and Robinson all together, no problem with it.
Yeah, and by the way, also it kind of goes to what I was saying about Oladipo before, which is him playing on the second unit, it'll stagger him a little bit with Jimmy Butler, and that gives him the opportunity for more usage there. So, yeah, I'm on the same page with you. Corey Jefferson left us a super chat. Would you lock Luka on the late slate for FanDuel? Depending how many lineups you're playing, the answer is probably.
Probably. I mean, I'm locking him for the regular slate with 7 games. I can't imagine in the late slate, I'd be like, you know what? I'm going to get away from a 90% Luka Doncic. There's probably more to be said about fading him in a late slate where he's going to be 80, 90% and just hoping he fails. But I would not be doing that anyway. I just have 100% of him today.
Got another question. Oh, Jeff Campbell said he left us a super chat that wasn't answered. Here we go.
I'm sorry.
Vincent and Markkanen or Oladipo and Bridges for FanDuel? Oladipo and Bridges for me.
Yeah, Oladipo Bridges. Mikal Bridges is probably the weirdest play on this entire slate for me. He's 6,200. He's not particularly fantastic. Like if you go to NBA Wowie and you throw in, it was just something last night that I did where I was just like, oh, Mikal Bridges without Chris Paul, without everything else. I just kind of expected him to grade out really well for me. He's still only around like a 22% usage guy, which is kind of wild to me. When you put that in there, I expect he's still just a guy who could play in a competitive game. I mean, they're 12-point dogs. Could get wonky here for sure, but like I would think one of the ways that it turns out okay for you is that he plays well. You're getting a steep ownership cut off of Dwayne Washington, who's kind of expected to eat up all the usage and all the assist rate and everything. But Mikal Bridges, especially from a defensive perspective, for FanDuel purposes, could really work out for you. Even on DK, he can rack them up. He's going to be out there, trying to keep this game close. He's the best player out of everybody active there. I don't think there's really any question about that. So like he's in that mid-range, but like he's a piece that I still think it's pretty easy to get overweight to. And so we didn't really talk about him before, but I've got him in for 36 minutes. And I do expect him to be somebody that, even though he hasn't been so good from a fantasy perspective this season without Paul and without Booker, I expect positive regression. Here at Stokastic, we put him in for an extra 0.1 fantasy points per minute. That's a pretty drastic change. So he's somebody who's coming in well over the field for me, right around 40%.
By the way, we've got a couple of good starts for the slate. First of all, Nerlens Noel, 3 minutes into the game, does have 2 points and a block. James Harden is going absolutely bonkers right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
3 minutes into the game,
Harris.
James Harden, 5 points, 4 rebounds, two assists, something else too. Nerlens Noel, who's just shutting down Joel Embiid right now. Joel Embiid just 2 fantasy points in 3 minutes. So Nerlens Noel owns Joel Embiid. I'm sure that'll age well later. But also, Nerlens Noel drew a charge on Joel Embiid. So Embiid also does have a foul. Something to keep an eye on. A couple minutes into the game here. So this could really mean a ceiling game for James Harden.
What could mean the game stays closer and, they only lose by 14 instead of by 25. So that's cool.
Some more super chats we had that came in. And then we'll look at BetPro and we'll talk about some of our favorite bets that we have for the later games. Always hard. There are things that you plan to do that we want to do on these shows. And even today where you just think, oh, for sure, we've got all our ducks in an order. There's nothing crazy in terms of news. Nobody really looking.
You did say that today. You totally jinxed it, by the way.
It just happens every NBA slate.
That's true.
But for the first 40 minutes of the show, we just kind of were able to play it straight and talk about the guys we had in our lineups. And then everything we talked about for the first 40 minutes ended up being horseshit once Isaiah Stewart got rolled out.
From the absolute clouds, too.
Nico Pico, who is Cringequist? Is he a good pick? Chat keeps.
It's not a real person.
Who originated was it you? Was it self-coined?
I made a joke about myself one time because that's generally how things start is I say something stupid or I make a joke about myself. I don't know. It was a show where I said the word cringe a lot. Then I was just like, Cringequist. I remember saying that at some point in time. Obviously, my brain is also like, oh, I've seen it in chat. It could be one of those things. What's the term for when you think that something is the way that it is, but then it's like an alternate reality where it's like bridged in a certain way? Jordan Klein, I feel like you would know.
Yeah, it's having done too much drugs in high school. That's what it's
cool.
called.
Yeah, that's what it is. Jordan definitely knows that.
Yeah, Jordan right away. He's like, dude, bro, yeah.
Dude, bro, chill. Look at me, bro.
Super chat from Enzo Boza. That gets me to Leonard and Luca. I don't know what. Oh, so before he was saying, but okay, I see. So we have the 4 Heat. He said it gets him to, that's totally cool. Getting to Luca and Kawhi today. Totally okay with that.
Yep.
Nico Pico. I once lost $700 on something he said. Here's $2. Thank you, Nico Pico.
Thanks.
I wonder what it is that he's referring to.
Yeah, I don't know, but that really sucks for you.
The next question we have is from Chard Rosman Porzingis. Barnes or Anunoby for the 888 on DK? I feel like Anunoby has a better floor, but Barnes more upside. I prefer Barnes today.
Yeah, Barnes is really popular. I'm underneath this number. I prefer him too, but I have 8%? He's 20% right now on DK. I think everybody's looking at that game environment and just being like, oh, I got to play everybody against Charlotte. It's 7-game slate. I'm just not falling into that mid-range in the same way because there's so many cheapies that I think you just kind of rotate through everybody on Phoenix. You rotate through everybody on Miami. And eventually, if that lines up with Luka the way that I'm building, that's the path that I would take. But yeah, straight up, I think straight up now tell me you really want to love me forever. Scotty Barnes.
Shane Daly, man wood or love ball? Giggity. Man wood or love ball? All the above. These are all things we love on this program.
All good things.
Nico Pico, shout out Chard Rosman Porzingis. Stop you. Jinx it. And then a follow-up from Nico Pico. Mandela, acid. CIA, acid, shrooms, Mandela. Exactly. The next question from Thaddeus Brown. Check the tape. I said Cringequist a few weeks ago. To be honest, that's been something that's been in the lexicon around here for years. Yeah.
You're out of your mind. Congratulations on originating a stupid name that I came up with randomly myself like 2 years ago. Good talk.
Yeah, it's been around for a couple of years.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago. Good one.
Lou Vernon. Greg is the man. There we go.
I agree. He's my man.
Go. Let's see if there was any more questions to answer in Discord. If not, then we are going to go over to BetPro. Oh, we did get some questions in Discord. Then after that, we'll go to BetPro and we'll look for some questions We'll look for some bets that we like for today. First, JEW, DK single entry, Deadman or Landale. Madub T. More for at Eric Lindquist. He says he watches Detroit a lot, but why the need for each city they play to bring up Ivy was raised by women basketball players, or that women guided his game?
Yeah, so when you watch, this is the things you learn from League Pass, but his mom, I believe, is the head coach. I can't remember where she's the head coach. She's the women's basketball coach. Purdue? Is she the women's coach at Purdue?
I have no clue.
Notre Dame. It's Notre Dame. Yeah, she's the women's coach at Notre Dame now. Took over for the other chick, but Jaden Ivey's mom is the coach there, and then would like go to the Purdue games and drive and go watch him, and then vice versa. So like they bring it up all the time. Like they bring up his mom and his basketball background all the time.
By the way, some updates from before. Still no additional fantasy points from Nerlens Noel. Stuck at 2 points in a block. Jaden Ivey up to 3 points, 2 rebounds in a block. Harden, 5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists now. So he is crushing. We've got Jackie Treehorn 87. Sup, fellas. Eric, Iggy Pop or Sex Pistols?
Sex Pistols.
All right, let's hit on the rest of these questions in Discord.
If you had said Iggy Thump, though, Iggy Thump was banger. Jack White, the White Stripes. Yeah, I mean, so good. If you guys haven't heard the Canadian album of the White Stripes live, it's like Northern something, whatever. I can't remember the exact name of the album. It should be easy to find. It's a live album of the White Stripes touring Canada. It is one of the greatest live albums of all time. Check it out.
T. Lee wants Duke to come on the screen, please, and thank you.
Other room.
Yeah, he's busy. He's busy. He's living his life. He's a young teenage boy.
Hey, we get how many likes do we need? I'll give Duke a cameo if we get like 2,000 likes. Well, how many likes are we at?
I don't know.
Not enough. Not enough is the answer.
4-prong dinger saying Mitchell, Luka, Siakam for single entry GPP. Luka.
Yeah, Luka I have 100% of. So it'd be weird to recommend anything that isn't Luka.
BK, last man in, Butler or Wood. That's Butler.
Like not remotely close.
Einsteinium, would you play Landale and Sarge in the same lineup together on FanDuel? Yeah, it's totally cool.
Totally fine. They're going to start together, assuming they're more than likely going to start together.
M. Pizzuli is asking Nurkic or Zubats. I prefer Nurkic today.
Nurkic.
Sniffs, does 30 minutes for Haywood Highsmith seem accurate? Yeah, I think that's totally real. I think that's totally reasonable.
How many minutes?
30.
Yeah, it's fine.
All right, let's talk about our favorite bets of the slate now. Because we do have BetPro, which I wanted to get to BetPro like 45 minutes ago. And then we had the Isaiah Stewart news, and then we got to lock, we got the Heat starting lineup. But now it's time to talk about it. BetPro. This is the newest tool that we have over at Stokastic, and you guys can get access to it for free for 7 days just by clicking on the link below. But also, we're going to be talking about some of the stuff that Eric and I like coming out of BetPro. And also, this goes really well with the deal that we have with BetMGM, who sponsored our show today. You sign up at BetMGM. You could also sign up at BetPro, so you could get 2 free months over at Stokastic, or you could also get 7 free days of BetPro. And then you go over here and help it to place some of the initial bets you place over at BetMGM. But now as we head over to BetPro, Eric, is there anything you see here that really stands out to you? Is there anything you bet earlier in the day that is still a good line that you like?
Yeah, I thought props were really, really hard today. I mean, for me, I'm more interested in expected win percentage on a lot of things. Obviously, I'm going through a lot of the props. I have ways of being able to get prop exposure in a number of different facets. But looking at BetPro today, I mean, I had a couple that were at the top. Ivy was somebody that really, really popped earlier in the day on BetPro. Obviously, he's locked, not something you can really react to right now. So that was one of them that stood out to me there. Haywood Highsmith has now moved up the board there too. An under on assists there. That makes some sense. Omayuri points is at 7.5. I can't believe that there's a line available for that already. There you go. I think the under of that looks really, really nice as well. But I'm always looking at expected win percentage, and that's kind of the column that I focus the most on. Everything looked to be right around 55, 60%. And long term, that's not going to be something that I'm too interested in going nuts for. The fantasy scores have been very slow to react. So if you guys are playing where I'm getting most of my prop exposure, that being Prize Picks, No House Advantage, that is where I would be focused on and how I use BetPro. But looking at the books right now, Omayuri, he's a guy that I just didn't really end up on. I'm with you. I think the under of that looked pretty good. Somebody that I just don't think sees the floor enough.
By the way, we just got a whole bunch of super chats that came in as well. So,
and I don't know who the Sex Pistols are. Are you kidding me? You're kidding me, right? English punk rock, like the originators, like Blitzkrieg Pop. Like, are you joking me? You think I don't know this?
Who are you talking to?
I don't know. Somebody said I didn't know who the Sex Pistols were. That's absurd.
Oh no, he just said something else about Jack White afterwards.
Oh, gotcha. I didn't see.
But it wasn't. So somebody said. You were talking about Iggy Pop also afterwards.
Iggy Thump is the name of the song.
Yeah,
that's good stuff.
All right, super chat from Salvo G. Markkanen and Powell or Kawhi and Bridges? Kawhi and Bridges.
Kawhi and Bridges for sure. I like Kawhi. Then, Kawhi, we haven't talked about either. I like Kawhi a lot. How could you not?
Yeah, good spot for Kawhi for sure. By the way, Nerlens Noel just got another defensive stats. There we go.
Smashing.
I mean, it's not even, he's so cheap. It's not like we need that much.
I know. I'm so mad at myself. I only have 15% and I pride myself on being a good tournament player. I knew that was a mistake immediately when you said his ownership. Like, I made a massive mistake.
I wish I would have played more Harden now because he's having a great first quarter. No other reason. I just wish I had. Yeah. The next super chat we have is John Bryant, Highsmith or Sarge on DK. I prefer Sarge. So the other thing too with Saric is you just have the potential for, and this is also going to depend on the status of Landry Shamet and the status of Torrey Craig. But I mean, if those guys are to get ruled out, then it's just a really good looking spot for Dario Saric. So I'm going to say him for now. And then the answer would have been Highsmith if those guys end up playing. But for now, I'm going to say Saric as the way to go.
He's so low owned now in our projections. It's pretty wild.
Yeah, I did get to less of Saric after the Pistons lineup came out just because it was another cheap guy. Like I ended up with, as we know at this point, a lot of Nerlens Noel. And I mean, there's only so many value guys you could play. It's not like I'm building lineups with $8,000 left on the table.
This is true.
All right, a couple minutes to go until lock. The Pistons keeping this game somewhat close, 23-17. James Harden, the big performer so far, 7 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Joel Embiid also going nuts right now, 9 points, 3 boards and assists, 2 blocks for him. We've got Tyrese Maxey off the court. As far as the Pistons go, 2 points, a rebound, a steal, and a block for Nerlens Noel. Relative to price, kind of the only guy doing shit for them at the moment. And listen, if I could get like 25 points from Nerlens Noel min price, I'll feel pretty decent about it.
I mean, regardless, you won the game theory of the day. May God have mercy on my soul.
Super chat from Taylor Weidman. Jolene Live was always a good one by the White Stripes. Jack White is good solo live. Here is for the 196th lineup. Thank you, Taylor.
Buddy,
we appreciate you.
I've listened to that cover of Jolene. Again, it's Northern Lights. I'm pretty sure that was the name of the album. I can't remember exactly. It's something like something Northern Lights. But it is truly one of the greatest. Just the amount of space that Jack White can take up with a guitar is just outrageous.
We have a super chat here from there's no Big Boy A left it. What is this currency? It looks like he left us 99 power drills. Have you ever seen this currency before?
Let's see. If I find it.
See if there's a question. Oh, here we go.
What is that?
He's
Big Boy
us,
A.
Zubats and LaMelo
pop thing. That's the Ramones. I know it is. I'm just saying that, like, the English pop scene.
He asked this question about the Heat game. We've got like 30 seconds.
Go.
Zubats and LaMelo or Siakam and Oladipo. Well, I don't really love any of those combos, but Siakam and Oladipo.
Yeah, that would be the one.
All right, that is going to do it for us, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Filipino peso?
It's pretty cool.
All right. There we go. All right. Well, thank you for the super chat. I learned something new today. Filipino peso. If you guys didn't do it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck with the rest of your slate. Don't forget to look out for the Suns news. Landry Shamet, Torrey Craig, both questionable. Good luck tonight.